we start, bro. I don't have any. I know you've seen some of my videos. I don't really have any specific intro or anything like that. We just started off like, "What's up?"
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, just want to welcome you. You know,
Thank
this is my guy right here, you guys. This is a special day, as you can see. Wifey's not here today. She gave up her seat because we really want to interview, and I think that testimonies are so important. It's how we overcome the blood of the Lamb, the word of testimony. And I believe that we're called to share our testimonies. And there are just those people that you meet and they just have amazing testimonies and you know they're being called to share it. And I believe that Cam is one of those people. And I'm honored to be one of the first that he actually opens up and shares with. And so I just want to honor him and steward what he's making available to us, you know. And so I hope that you guys can appreciate what he's come to share. We've done a couple testimonials in the past, but it's been more like pre-post deliverance type testimony. But I just really think that you have such a powerful story. And I really like that about Ascend. So Cam is a friend of mine that I met at church. So we both attend the same church. We attend Ascend in Atlanta. And Cam, I look at you as first day of school homie. You know what I'm saying? That person that you just click with. You don't know who you're gonna eat with in the cafeteria, and then you end up sitting together, and then you just got a vibe with them. And so you go home, you be like, yeah, I did. I met a friend. And so you're that guy. I would say he's like my first friend at Ascend. You know what I'm saying? And so I feel like we have a mutual kind of love for one another in that way, is that we consider each other like, yo, this is my boy in the Lord. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm honored to have you just in my home, chopping up with my family, eating some burgers, you know, just spending the day together and then just trying to see where we go with this. So welcome, you guys. Welcome. And like I said, I'm introducing my friend to the world, to Cam. I believe that this is going to be like you're like my Cat Williams. You know what I'm saying? Like you about to blow my channel up. You know what I'm saying? We're going to give this testimony and it's going to catch the world on fire. I just believe in just cataloging things like this digitally. I think that this is important. And another thing is that there's another motivation behind this. I believe that Cam is, well, we both believe that he's being inspired to pen, to write a book, and to share his testimony. And I know that the Lord is calling me to write a book for people who need to write the book. And so I have a book coming out called That Book Ain't Gonna Write Itself. And I'm essentially mentoring him in this process as I write the book to prepare him to write the book. And so we just thought that sitting here and laying things out and just going through his entire testimony would be an option or an opportunity to just catalog the entire testimony and have something like a digital outline. So now he can look at this testimony and be able to draw from that and realize, okay, this is a strong point. This is stuff I need to include. And so I'm hoping that after this, you'll be able to take this and allow this to be somewhat of an outline, you know?
For sure.
So where to start? Um, I really, with you, I like to start at the beginning as if we're in a deliverance session. And when I say the beginning, I mean like childhood, you know, relationship with your parents, you know, things like that. And then get into, you know, he shared with me some really juicy stories that I would think were just powerful to share, that definitely need to be in the book, you know, and then just see how that flows into just redemptive grace, to see how that flows into what God is up to. What is he doing? You know what I'm saying? And because it's all for his glory, clearly. You know what I'm saying? How does it lead into that? Where is it showing how far you've gone? You know, how far
Yeah.
you've come. Show us the Saul to Paul conversion type situation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I guess maybe just let's start off with just you just kind of just introducing yourself, telling us about just who you are and where you are, like you're living in McDonough and you're at a Sin Church, and just kind of give us a little introduction, and I'll probably just kind of just prod you, just lead you with some questions, and hopefully we'll get to the promised land and we'll get to the good stuff.
All right. All right. Well, yeah, I'm Cam. I'm Cam Lawson. From Michigan originally, from Holland, Southwest Michigan. Been down in Georgia for about a year now. Moved down here to be a part of Ascend Church and part of the Ascend Academy, 2-year ministry school. Before this, kind of lived a crazy lifestyle.
You came here from prison?
I came here straight off parole. Like within 10 days of getting off parole,
Mm.
I shot down here.
To ministry school.
Yeah, as
Like
soon as I was able
that's
to.
like y'all want to stay in just on that. Like this dude went to prison, came out of prison on parole, went straight to ministry school. Like that's Saul to Paul conversion right there. And so you came here in just an effort to change your life and to go on a different trajectory, start
Yeah.
ministry school. And so now you're 2 years in, or
No, this is the end of my first year.
okay,
First year of ministry school.
okay,
Oh yeah.
okay. Anything else besides just focusing on school, like you working or
Yeah, I mean, I wait tables
okay,
at a restaurant called Two Eggs,
okay.
but it was really
Is
like I
that a
felt.
chain?
Yeah, they got like three
I feel
three
like I've heard of
locations
that.
right now.
Yeah, two
Probably
eggs.
more. Probably more. It's a good business model.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much of a plug I want to give them on here.
Two eggs.
But
Okay.
yeah, I felt led to that restaurant first, like the day I came into Georgia and was in McDonough. Like it was like highlighted in my mind, and
Yeah.
I was like, that's why I'm applying, you know. And I wait tables. I've done catering, waiting in restaurants for forever, but
Mm-hmm.
they weren't even hiring, you know. And it's all female servers. Like I said, they weren't even hiring. But the week that I applied, they ended up firing their only male server and called me back.
Wow.
And the Lord's been doing things there,
Wow.
even
Wow.
at a breakfast brunch spot. Like
Yeah.
it's crazy, like the stories that I've already got coming out of there. But it's
Mm.
been super good.
Man, that's amazing. That's amazing. I believe that all of us are called to write the book. I believe all of us are called to share our testimony. When Jesus asked for the disciples to stay in Jerusalem, to be endued with power, to be his witnesses, I believe that's what we're doing when we tell our story.
Mm-hmm.
We're essentially sharing the gospel within our testimony, especially a testimony as powerful as yours. You've been on this earth for 45, been under
Mm-hmm.
45 years. Like you have a long enough story to show from here to here, what the Lord has done. And that in itself is the gospel, how he saved you and the story about how you were saved in prison. And that's the gospel. But I believe we all have that story. We all have a story of how he saved us and what he saved us from. And we're all being called to tell it. But I just feel that writing it down, like that's the way to tell it.
Right,
Like
right.
people back in the day used to write it on the walls and before they had paper. And there was always a way to catalog it, when they only had word of mouth and they would just tell it in stories.
Mm-hmm.
But we're called to tell our story. You're called to tell your story. You're called to write the book. And I believe that a lot of people feel that. I get a lot of people that just like, yo, man, I feel like I'm supposed to write, eventually I'm going to do this. And there's just this hesitancy and they never actually pull the trigger. And so I think that most people that stumble upon this are people that are called to write the book. And so I'm hoping that you can be inspired to know that that is God calling you. That is not the devil calling you to write the book. I believe that we're all called to write the book. I believe that we're mandated to write it. I just think that the book is just like a format of the testimony. But we're supposed to tell our testimony. And I want to minister this to you specifically. When the children of Israel had to hit another 40 laps, he was like, yo, because of your disobedience, your children are going to have to wander for 40 years. But the reason that they had to wander was because they now were going to become the fathers.
Mm-hmm.
And so that means their parents weren't going to be able to pass on the inheritance in the promised land to be able to tell the story of how God split the Red Sea or how he brought the fire by night and the cloud by day and how he brought water from the rock and how he gave us victory over our enemies and all the miracles that he had done and performed and all the things that they had went through in the wilderness. Those experiences were supposed to be imparted to their children when they came into this promised land. And so because they were going to die and they would not cross over, now he had to take this other group of kids around the wilderness to train them so that they could impart and give to their children who would be born in the promise.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have a son and possibly will have children in the future. We think that the inheritance is property and real estate, stocks and bonds, trust fund. No, this is the inheritance. Your story, your child understanding his spiritual lineage, imparting the fear of the Lord, like that's his impartation. That is his inheritance. You owe him that. Mm-hmm. That's your job as the father. And so I would like for this to be an opportunity for you, because you told me that he's maybe heard your story, but he doesn't really know your story.
Right.
And so I like for this to be as open and honest as possible. Almost like, man, if I die tonight, my son will be able to look at this and know the story, know the story of his father, be able to impart it to his children, be able to share this inheritance with his children's children, type situation like that. I want to inspire you to want to open up, to share it as if this is really for him. The books that I've written, they're for you guys and the impartation and the revelation that I get to write. But at the end of the day, it's really cataloged for my children so that they can have this stuff, because it's all I got. It's all I am. I'm pretty much imparting everything that he's given me into these books. Yeah. My children can read this stuff and receive the knowledge and impartation, and that's their inheritance. And so if this is the only thing you leave your son as a spiritual inheritance, he can watch this and receive and learn. And I'm finding that the struggle that we have the most in a deliverance session is when someone doesn't understand their lineage. Mm-hmm. They don't know any generational patterns. They don't know their grandparents. They don't have a relationship with their parents. And so they don't even have the ability to give us the generational patterns so we can understand and see their footprint spiritually, to be able to help them with some things. Like they don't even realize the things that are bondages that are generational because they haven't seen the patterns. And so I thought it was interesting, like a pattern that we've already talked about some patterns, and we'll get into that. But for your son to be able to watch this and know so much about not just his father, but whatever you can include to help him understand where he comes from and understand, like, even maybe some of the things that he struggles with right now are maybe because of his lineage, like that can help. And so I just kind of want you to keep him in mind more than you might think about how maybe something you might say might offend your sister or your mother, or how something you might say might cause someone at a sin to look at you differently. I want you to think more about, what's your son's name?
Ian.
I want you to think about Ian and act as if we're just doing this for Ian, not even for your book. We're doing this for Ian because you're writing the book for Ian. It just happens to be everyone else is going to benefit. But your firstborn is actually the priority. And so if you think about, I'm just going to be real honest, keep it true for Ian's sake. If I never personally get to tell my story to him, and this is, I don't know if like you ever see those movies where like, if you're watching this, it's probably because I'm dead right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, Let's keep it real like that. Yeah. Like I wanted to like just put that on you, to just be like, yo, let's keep it 100. And if it get too 100, we can edit. You know what I'm saying? But I want you to just keep it true and just assume that your mom or whoever might be offended by what you share is not going to see this. This is going to show up in the algorithm of the people that the Lord is calling to see this. Right. And so I just want you to remove any fears or doubts about what you might want to share or not share, and think like, this is my son. He's 24. And so he's old enough to hear the real. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so I believe that in us just moving in the spirit of truth, I believe that so many others will be set free, because you'd be shocked in the parallels or what people will see and hear and be like, yo, me too. You know what I'm saying? So I want the spiritual stuff. I want to hear about the demonic. You know what I mean? I want to hear it all. And so if we could, I like to trace generational patterns and for his benefit too. But what could you tell me, whatever you can tell me about, let's not go too far back. We can just start with, say, your grandparents.
Mm-hmm. I mean, alcoholism was a big part of their lives. I think both of them.
On both sides?
I think on both sides, yeah. Definitely on my mom's side too, but my my dad's side, it was prevalent, I think, for sure.
Did you have relationship with your grandparents?
Oh yeah, my grandpa and my grandma were like my best friends when I was growing up.
Mm.
Like I have 4 sisters, so I tried to stay out of the house, and grandma and grandpa lived 3 blocks away, so
Yeah.
I hung out with them a lot. Stayed the weekends over there at their house, I remember grandpa used to pick me up in a cab on his way home from the VFW after he'd be drinking, and come pick me up and take me to go spend the weekend with them.
So you had a close relationship with the grandparents on what side?
On my dad's side.
On your dad's side.
Yeah.
And as far as their exposure, it was more alcoholism. Was there any other patterns you noticed that were just in the family, or any other interactions that are real memorable from that time with your grandparents?
I mean, not so much. I think before my memory of it, I think there was some abuse, maybe some physical abuse type stuff, but I'm not, it wasn't talked about,
Yeah.
I know my dad and his dad did not have a good relationship at all. Okay. It was like they just weren't close at all.
And how did that translate to you and your father's relationship?
I mean, we were good. I had a good upbringing,
Yeah.
but we had a lot of kids in the house, so there wasn't a lot of one-on-one time. And I think when I started getting in trouble at 12 years old, 13 years old, it was like I was interacted with less. I was kind of blacklisted,
Yeah.
My older sister was kind of a bad egg too, so we were kind of in a lot of ways left to our own devices, but back then, you could run the streets too, until the street lights came on.
Yeah.
That's what we did.
Yeah.
So my main goal was to stay out of the house and just kind of do my thing. But my parents were not people I looked up to. They weren't people I wanted to model my life after.
And why do you say that? What was it that you saw that made you determine I ain't trying to mess with that?
I mean, just the drudgery of it, the unhappiness. They didn't seem happy, like the lives they led, the 9 to 5, the rat race they were in, to still continue to struggle with all a house full of kids and bills and second mortgages, and just it just wasn't appealing. That wasn't
so. What
life.
did you What did you have as a role model? What did you look for? How did you have any kind of aspirations or dreams? Who did you try to pattern yourself after?
I mean, I think all kids, I looked up to a lot of sports figures, and then when kind of sports kind of went out the window, when I started making some adolescent wanting to be an adult choices, smoking cigarettes and sneaking beers or whatever, things like that, started gravitating toward music and those rock icons were the who I wanted to aspire to be, that freedom type lifestyle,
You said 12 or 13 is when you started kind of pivoting and going the wrong direction. What happened, I guess, 10 and 11? What happened in that?
I mean, I don't know exactly what happened, but I feel back then I was like a scammer back then. I remember scamming my cousins and the neighbor kids on basketball cards, football cards, things like that, scamming them, literally getting down on them. And I remember back then the malls were big, and we used to have card shows at the malls.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing. It was a hustle for me back then. And I would let these guys that have these tables set up with all their different collectibles. I'd let them, you want to check out my stuff, see if you want to buy some of my stuff, and we'll trade or whatever. And that was part of it, the hobby,
Yeah.
But while they were doing that, I'm swiping stuff off the tables. Hobby shops. There's a couple hobby shops in my neighborhood, and I would go there and just I started shoplifting these cards. This hobby became an obsession. I took it to a whole extreme, excessive level.
Wow.
And to where I was taking unopened boxes of these packs of cards, was taking so much, I would take them down the street to the other hobby shop and sell them for cash money. And I had the guy at that hobby shop believing I had an uncle that worked for like the Upper Deck Corporation.
Wow.
And so I was selling him these boxes like at a discount, and he was like buying them without questioning it. Like this like, I don't know, probably was like 13 or 14.
Wow, you're a businessman.
I was a bad kid.
Man, but you know what's crazy is that this is criminal activity,
Mm-hmm.
right? And a lot of people don't realize that criminal activity is something that is in your that's in the bloodline. Like people don't just, we're born in sin. We're shaping it. You know, this is something that we're born with. And so a lot of our tendencies or a lot of things we gravitate towards, it's because it's in our blood. A lot of people don't believe or subscribe to the generational bloodline thing. It's so biblical. I have books on it. So I know that criminal activity has to be in your bloodline, you know, whether you even know it or not. For you to be functioning at such a level at 12, it's crazy, but it's not so crazy because it's in your bloodline.
Right,
And so because just through our friendship and our conversation, that's kind of why I wanted to start with like the grandparent thing. And I know I didn't go far back enough, but what can you tell me about what you know about that being in your bloodline, criminal activity?
About, like, I had like maybe 5 generations back or something like that. I had whatever great grandfather that was actually supposedly hung as a horse thief. So as far as criminal activity, I know that's what I've heard. I don't know if it's fact, but that's like family lore that I've learned like over the years. As far as other like type hustlers or crooks in my family, I don't know if that. I mean, I don't know what type of lawless behavior the Lawsons were involved in.
But as far as you know, and this is something that I see that's also common in dealing with people in deliverance, is that those people that don't fully understand the generational patterns is because they didn't have like a really close knit situation. And so it seems like that's your situation as far as like you understanding, like knowing all your uncles and aunts and, you know, all your mom's siblings and stuff like that. It didn't seem like you just had relationship to really know all the stories and really know about them. Would you say that that's kind of limits your perspective?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so I think that just that alone is the enemy. Division in families and us not being close to where we even know our stories, or the fact that many of us don't share our testimony. Like we don't take the time to share, to where there's plenty of things I'm sure that my parents just decided not to share with me.
Well, I mean, if there's no redemption in it, what are people sharing it for? You know what I mean? There's a lot of shame, a lot of guilt.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's the
if
reason.
there was no good end to the story, like, I don't want to talk about the stuff that I've done. I definitely don't want to give glory to the devil. And like, I've like the operation of evil in my life, you know?
And so that could be also the key, is realizing that there's just shame and condemnation behind the things that they've done, and maybe they don't, or they have yet to get to that point where the Lord is glorified. You know what I mean? But it's definitely something that is interesting that is in your blood, and it seems to be functioning at an early age. It seemed to be almost like a gift. Like,
oh yeah, I mean, I had a paper route. Like that, my first job, I had a paper route, and back then they would just deliver you the papers. The paper boy or paper girl had to go collect like the monthly subscription fee from the customers, and then every month, like, I'd have to pay a certain amount to the newspaper company. And I would go to I had like 40, 50 people on this route, and I figured a way I would like go to them, at least the ones I knew were like a little bit more naive, and I'd tell them, well, you know, I'm going to be on vacation next month, and I got somebody else taking over my route. So if you could just pay me for the next 2 months, that'd be great. And it would like avoid confusion with my substitute paper route runner. Wow. And I would collect this money, but then I'd be back the next month to collect their money again, and they wouldn't even think about it. They'd just pay the paper boy. Or else they'd be like, well, didn't you just get 2 months or 3 months from me last month? And I'd be like, did I? You know, and like playing it cool. Like,
I'm just 12.
It was like maybe 13, 14, about that age.
Still
though.
Early
but
criminal activity.
Like Like it was, yeah, it was horrible criminal activity way back then.
Yeah, yeah. And so where was your code? Where was your moral code, or where was your thermometer or your barometer at that point? As far as like, I know you said that you grew up in church still, like you guys were raised
Yeah,
around.
yeah, Christian school, all
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So where were you there when it came to just knowing that how you were dealing with people, how you were living at that earlier age? Was there any conviction? Like, where were you there? Or were you just stone cold and just
I
didn't
think it
think
was just
twice?
stone cold. Like if you're able to get got, then that's on you. Like, and I think I had that mentality into my young adult years.
Yeah.
I know when I was like not walking with the Lord, I used to talk. I told people I'll gladly teach life lessons. You know, and not good ones. You
So
know
you
what I
were
mean?
teaching life lessons
Yeah,
essentially,
yeah,
but
yeah,
you were
yeah,
coming up in the
yeah.
process.
I used to talk like that, like when I'd like get in a car that had the keys in it or whatever. Like that's on you. Like I need the ride, and you provided it. It's not on me. That's on you. Like, and I would have no remorse over that.
So I didn't. I know we hadn't gotten to the car thievery stuff yet, but because of the story of your great grandfather
Mm,
being a horse thief, you know what I mean, and then
yeah,
you later becoming a car thief, we know that back in those days when they would have horse thievery, that was the mode of transportation back then. So that was equivalent of stealing cars.
mm-hmm.
And so here you are, the modern day version of that, stealing cars. And I find that the parallel so interesting that he was caught. You know what I mean? And that later, we hear in your story that that's pretty much one of the last things you did before going into prison was stealing a car.
Mm.
So you were going to church as
Yeah,
well, and
yeah,
Christian school,
yeah, yeah,
and doing all of the.
yeah. But I mean yeah. Well, I mean it's very religious,
Yeah.
like organizations. Like I always used to talk about church was like you'd go into a church, a Christian Reformed church, like it was like with the familiarity and the impact of a movie theater. You know?
So it was culture more
Yeah,
than
yeah,
anything.
yeah. It's what good
Yeah.
people did. Even
Yeah.
at my worst though, like I remember even at my worst, at like the pinnacle of like heroin addiction, I would sometimes drag myself into a church on a Sunday just because like I needed something. I knew I needed something.
Mm.
Like I was just miserable, and it
Mm.
was like there was moments I felt like like touched. You know what I mean? I know like in my heart, like I always knew like I was a child of God. Like I had an experience when I was like young at this little like camping retreat. And I remember just like breaking down as a little kid. Like I was probably like 7 or 8 or something. Like hearing like my heart, like Cameron, you're my child, and I love you.
Mm.
And like underneath the stars out on this beach on Lake Michigan, and like I remember that moment breaking down as a child, and like I don't know what happened in between that, to where like I don't know exactly what happened, like why I didn't seek after him and
Yeah.
went the other direction, but I clearly went the other direction.
So I'm still with you in like 12 to 14,
Yeah.
right? And what would you say your relationship with your siblings was at this time? And then kind of tell me about scholastically, where were you, like, how were you in school around this time?
I mean, with siblings, super combative. I was kind of close with my older sister, but she had like ran away from home. She was out of the house, and like she had like, she was 5 years older than me. So like she ended up running off, getting married, had kids right away. So that was another escape for me. I could go stay at their apartment,
Mm.
hang out with her. She was buying my cigarettes. She'd pay me like a 6 pack of beer to babysit or whatever.
Yeah.
But other than that, like my younger siblings were super combative. Like I had no relationship with them. But there was some serious divides in the home. I have a half brother, so um, there was like the whole thing with my parents had split up for a time and then got back together, and then in efforts to kind of like strengthen the family unit, a lot of attention was focused on the baby, and then the younger siblings were like, oh, it's all good, but I was old enough to like understand like the divide and understand what had happened in the relationship, and I was like, super detached and disappointed in them, like even more so. You know what I mean? Like I didn't aspire to be like them in any way, but then it's like, then I saw this whole scene, this whole like Days of Our Lives, just like scene play out, and I was like, wanted to be even less involved in that, you know?
Did that cause you to feel, I don't know if neglect is the word, but rejection from them, or did that cause you to reject them? Like it just seems like
I think it was a
the
little bit of
rejection would
both.
come
It was a
in.
little bit of both because I've already like exhibiting like criminal like ways, you know, like and really had been like kind of, I felt like a disappointment because of things that I had done and things that I had been getting into. So like I said, the focus was kind of off of, you know, the bad kids. We'll leave them to their devices, and we're gonna focus on the young ones who there's still hope for them.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So they knew that you were kind of getting into mischief, but you hadn't been like caught and put in a juvie hall or anything like that at that point yet.
Not until I was like 15 or something.
Okay. That's my next thing is like, okay, well, high school is usually next level. There's probably more things to get into. How do you graduate in your criminal activity now that you're in high school and probably potentially getting caught now?
Oh, drugs.
So
Drugs.
drugs come in high
Yeah,
school.
Like, yeah,
Selling them, doing them, both.
all of it.
Yeah.
All of it. Yeah. I had I mean, we went to Christian school, so kids weren't really like too exposed to it. But I was like dating an upperclassman when I was like a freshman. So like I had like the in with all the older kids. My sister and her husband were still young too, and they had well, not her. She was super against drugs and alcohol at the time, but like I had access, you know, and access then was super limited. So I became like, I wouldn't say like a supplier, but I was like the encourager of all this behavior. Like, let's try this, let's do this, and we can get away with this. And
You know what's interesting is that I knew that the drug thing was going to come because when you were explaining to me how you had figured out the game when it came to the newspaper, I was like, man, that sounds like the drug gang. It sounds like consignment. Like it sounds like, you know, that's how it functions. You know, you have a supplier and you're responsible for selling and do your part and then paying the man. And I'm just like, man, by the time he gets to drugs, like he's already going to know how to do that. And so how was that different? Like you already kind of had an experience on how to work that, you know.
I mean, I didn't really get into like the selling of drugs until it was like a little bit later.
Okay.
Like, but I mean, I had a felony for a delivery charge at 18 years old. So.
And is that your first?
That was my first felony. Yeah.
Okay. Tell us what led up to that. You know, you said that high school is when the drugs came into the picture, but you still have, you know, 15, 16, 17. What led up to that? To your first felony?
I mean, I quit school at 16 the minute I was able to quit. Like I had an agreement. I'd gotten in some trouble with drugs at the Christian school. We actually went to a Youth for Christ convention in Rhode Island, like as a church group. We went out there with a bunch of my friends, and we brought a bunch of weed out there and ended up getting caught and sent home from this convention, which the school, they had like no jurisdiction over me, and I didn't get caught with anything, but all my friends had. And, you know, I was a part of it. And then there was another incident at school where they found some paraphernalia in like a gym locker. And I had gotten in trouble outside of school. I had gotten like a possession charge on the college campus that was like in my hometown. So I had like this criminal record at like 15, and the principal and vice principal of this Christian school took me in the office one day at the beginning of 10th grade, I think it was. And they just told me they couldn't kick me out, but that they would prefer that I didn't attend their school anymore because they were concerned about my influence. Wow. So I said, all right, I'll be happy to not go to your school anymore. Yeah. Wow. But really, I'm like, there was no love lost with that school at all. Like, it was just like a den of hypocrisy and just like with the religious system that they were a part of. Like, it was.
You knew what it was. Yeah. So you leaving, there's obviously a whole nother level of free time on your hand.
Well, I mean, I ended up having to go to a rehab.
Okay.
My parents put me in rehab. They were at their wits end. They didn't know what to do. Ended up going to rehab. The lady actually at the rehab came back and told them, she did an assessment. She said, no, he's just going through an experimental phase. You know, he's fine. Like I had her convinced, you know.
Yeah.
And literally like a week later, I got caught for like another possession charge. And after that, they're like, no, well, he needs rehabilitation. So they put me in this rehab for a while. And then while in the rehab, actually got like a vandalism charge against the school that had asked me to leave. So from that, ended up in like an inpatient rehab. After that, ended up going to a public school. But I was barely in attendance at that point. Just had no interest in it. I couldn't wait to be 16 so I could legally quit.
So at that point, then you walked away from the school situation. What did you do after that?
I think I was living with my sister, my older sister, for a little while. My parents didn't want me living with them because they couldn't control me. You know, like I was like,
Was there a formal like kick out? Like you got to go?
yeah, I think so. It was like a matter of like they were gonna call and have me put in like a juvenile home because parents can do that. They
Okay.
can like pay whatever the fee, like the housing fee. If you are an unruly child, your parents can just lock you up and just pay the housing fee to keep you in juvie. I don't know how the rules are these days,
Yeah.
but I know because they're legally responsible for me, you
Right.
know. So if I'm out there committing crimes,
Right.
like, and they're knowing I'm committing crimes,
Right.
like they're responsible. So rather than have the law crack down on them, they're like, well, we'll just lock you up. But my sister's like, no, he can come stay with me, which, you know, wasn't much better. But she was in a good place at the time. I mean, she tried to be. She was trying to be a good mother and all that at the time. But you know.
You living with your sister. What did that lead to? Like you weren't in school. Did you get a job? Did you just get back into the street and do more? I mean,
Oh yeah,
what was
it
your
was just more,
responsibilities? What was
more drugs, more partying. Like that's it.
yeah.
Just money and drugs and women. That's all. I like my life revolved around. I didn't care about anything else. It was really like I was living like a college lifestyle, but without all the classes. You know, like a party lifestyle, like Van Wilder type, like crazy, you
Yeah.
know, rock star lifestyle that was just no responsibility, no cares, just no direction.
And this went on for maybe a couple of years before you got popped in at 18.
Yeah, I got trouble at 18, and you know, it was just like in the system from that point, you know, trying to get out of the system, but you know, I had substance abuse issues, you know, fully like didn't want to quit doing anything, you know, didn't want to adhere to like any type of structure or rules, you know. So
Would you say that the majority of your situation though was more like lust of the flesh, partying, drinking, smoking, women?
oh
You
yeah.
weren't like sticking up people or
No.
stabbing people. Or, you know what I'm saying? It was more about you
No.
and
Yeah, yeah.
fulfilling your flesh.
Yeah. I didn't, I mean, I actually thought I was like a good person, you know, like I wasn't trying to be like a bad guy. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? Like I had my moments where like I didn't like it was all about me. I'm number one, you know, but I think I did mature a little bit to where it was like, man, I can't keep victimizing people.
Can't keep teaching lessons.
Right. That wasn't until I got older. When I
Yeah.
got older, then I was like, man, I'm teaching life lessons
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
This is what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Like, you live, you learn, and I'll teach you, you know?
So it sounds like you went through a cycle. Like it sounds like you were just doing your thing and didn't really have much conviction behind it. It was just, this is, I'm scamming. This is what I'm doing. Ran into some trouble, kind of just continued doing your thing. But it seems like there was a moment where it just became like my identity. This is what I do. Like I teach lessons. This is like things got darker. Is what it sounded like. Is
It
what
was
I'm getting.
more into like my 20s, I think. Like I had met my son's mother when I was like 19 or 20, something like that. Had him when I was 21.
Mm-hmm.
You know, tried to do the family thing. You know, she had a couple kids already, and was with her for 4.5, 5 years, something like that. Trying to do the family thing, but I still, I worked, but I still did all kinds of drugs and everything, and After her and I's relationship split up, I was just kind of lost in the sauce. Didn't know what I was gonna do. The plan was like shot. So I went back to like this bachelor like partying lifestyle. Got introduced to some harder drugs.
Tell me what you graduated from. When you say harder, you went from like weed and drinking to
Weed and drinking and mushrooms and acid to like cocaine
okay,
to crack.
okay,
And then crack and cocaine, like that was like huge for a while. Like
yeah,
with the people in my town and the circle of people. My older sister got into it real bad. She started doing cocaine as like a weight loss thing after she had all her kids, and her husband split up. And me and her were real close. So like the cocaine went from, that to cooking that up and smoking crack. And that became just like it was just around all the time. And it went from that, progressed to, I think I tried heroin for the first time when I was like 24, but I didn't get addicted to it until I was probably 27, something like that.
Now, the story with a lot of people, as far as the heroin or just the heavy drugs, is the crime tends to be just a means to an end. Like you might do the crime stuff just because you want money for the heroin, where you had been kind of in some criminal activity, for the past 12 years, possibly. But as far as things getting even darker for you, as far as the level of crime, whether it be stealing car or robbing a bank or just whatever it was that you got into, when did things just graduate? Like, did your level of crime graduate with your level of drug? When you got into the heavier drugs, did you feel more just capable of pulling off bigger crime?
I mean, when with the cocaine and like crack use, there was like, because that was sporadic. It wasn't like something like you're physically addicted to it. You got to have it.
Right.
But I have a theory. While it's in your system, you have like a need for it. Like your body, your mind still craves it if it's
Right.
in your actual physical system.
Right.
If you don't give yourself time to get off of it, like
Yeah.
you're still gonna
That's why
have that
withdrawal is so
craving.
rough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's that they call the Jones, and that Jones for
Jonesing.
it will make you do just about anything to get more. Like I wouldn't care where the money was coming from as long as I could get more. Like I might feel bad about it the next day. But heroin is a little bit different. Heroin, you can, at least for me, I was like maintaining. Like I was working 2 jobs and had like $100 a day heroin habit. Like I didn't steal, I just worked. But if I didn't have it, I couldn't work. And if I couldn't work, couldn't make money, and then at that point it was like all bets are off. I got to do whatever. So I mean, it was sporadic, but I mean, like all these years were all filled with like incarcerations too. I didn't just go to prison like once. I've been there twice, and with like the county jail time, like I was doing life in installments, literally. Like that's what like the officers, the correction officers, the COs at the jail and stuff would say, like, "Oh, he's
Life
back.
in
He's
installments.
life in installments," is what I was
heard
doing.
that. Yeah.
That's what it felt like too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get out for a breather, but you know you're going back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it sounds like that's a theory all throughout, because most people that get out, they expect them to come back.
Oh yeah. Well, like the recidivism rate is crazy. Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Yeah. So you're in and out of prison. You're just doing it. You know what I'm saying? At what point did you ever have like a break as far as like your health? Like did you have a psychotic break? Did you have something happen to you, or you almost OD'd, or like was there any, because this is all risky stuff,
Oh yeah.
what you're doing. Was there ever some close calls where you just know it was supernatural and God probably had mercy and saved you?
Well, I know supernaturally he saved me on July 21st, 2006. I overdosed, and like there's no way like I should still be here. I was like dead on the floor when they showed up. My girlfriend at the time had said the paramedics tried to hit me with the Narcan twice and it still didn't work. It was like the second time they hit me with it. And I remember like my body like hopping off the floor, but it didn't really have like an impact. Like I was still just gone. Like it just didn't really register, you know?
Yeah. That's still pretty early.
Mm-hmm.
So did you just keep transitioning to higher levels of your activity, or was it just, this is just my lifestyle, this is what I do?
Yeah, it just became just a lifestyle of
It's in and out of prison,
yeah,
drugs, hustle.
surrounding myself with the same type of people,
Mm-hmm.
same type of problems.
Mm.
Um, you know, I didn't see any type of way out of it, you know.
Were you looking for a way out of it?
I mean, you know, when I'd be locked up, like I would gravitate towards the word. I'd gravitate, you know, the Bible's everywhere and there's like church workers or whatever that come in and try and minister to people in there and everything. But like I said, I like gravitate towards that in those places because it was like easy. I could see like, and I shouldn't still be here. You know, the things that I've done, like I should be locked up forever. Like still be breathing. Like why, you know? And like I would see truths in the word, like things would pop out and like I would just feel it like, wow, that's deep, you know? But it was like the minute I'd get that little freedom, like little bit of my life back, I wanted, you know, the flesh was like screaming for this and screaming for that. And I wasn't worried about, you know,
So
like
if he had
my
your attention,
mortality or eternity in those moments, you know?
if he had your attention, it was usually when you were locked up.
Yeah, yeah.
So he saw that.
Mm.
Mm. Okay. So you would say, what was I guess the last straw? What was the turning point where you just like, okay, something ain't right. I know that I gotta find a way out of this, even though you saw no way out. Like, when were you, I guess, first like convicted for real to just be like, okay, I gotta figure out a way to find another route?
It was like 2017. I was like um, losing my mind. Like I had gone, started. There's like a methamphetamine epidemic out there. I mean, I imagine it's still happening, but at the time it was like it's just everywhere. It's super cheap, super prevalent, and it's like socially accepted as like speed. You know, like
Yeah.
people take Adderall. Like it was more like commonly known. People are doing meth. Like it's not, at least in around the circles and the area that I was in, it was like not a big deal, you know, especially if you did drugs already. It's like, you know, kind of like cocaine in the 80s or whatever, you know what I mean? Like it was just like a hush hush thing, but it wasn't like surprising to hear that somebody's doing a bump of meth in the background, in the bathroom or whatever. But I wasn't working. I was like hustling for like felt like a couple years. Burned in every bridge imaginable. Like I didn't have a place to stay really. I was jumping from my hometown Holland to Grand Rapids, where I'd lived for about 5 years, and to Lansing, like in the middle of the state. Never really having a place to stay for too long, you know? Like still like in this place where I'm just like scheming and like plotting and stealing and just like totally lost. And just I started experiencing some real like dark things. Like I started having like panic attacks that were just like I never experienced anything like that before. And it was just like the craziest thing ever. Some of the people, like the level of people that I was around, I like would find myself in these places where and around these people that it's just like I never imagined this in like my entire life, being in these situations and like these like literally like surrounded by killers, you know, people who's like, you know, your life is of no value. Like people disappearing on the street all the time, and being in this place to where like literally having people after my life. Like I know for a fact, like I know some of it was paranoia because of hearing word on the street, but I knew in 2 different cities, like I had people that were connected with gangs that were like, you know, I had like whatever green light on me to like, you know, there was like however much, I think I had heard like $5,000 or something was on my head, which is a lot of money. for somebody you don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you're involved in a gang and you're coming from Flint or something, and you don't know the neighborhood and you got the picture on your phone of what this dude looks like, $5,000 is a lot of money. Yeah. To just put a plug in.
He said meth was cheap. You could buy a lot of drugs with that.
Well, I mean, like, they could buy whatever with that. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like, and these aren't necessarily drug addicts that are like going around like, you know, committing murders. You know, but like. Life is cheap. Life is cheap where I was at and around the people that I was around. And especially if you were doing the things like I was doing. Like, it wasn't just like regular society that like would view me as like a dirtbag. It was like even the criminal element that I was around were like, this guy's got to go. Wow. You know, like there was a guy who had a grow operation out in Lansing that like his grow operation had been victimized a couple times. And
what's a grow operation?
Like a marijuana grow operation. He was certain that I was involved with it, and a couple of the other people. Like I said, it was victimized a couple times, and a couple of those people are dead now. And like I was convinced like they were taken out, you know, because he lost a lot of money in that operation with all of his stuff. And so my life was like, I felt like it was definitely in jeopardy. Like it wasn't.
Your head was on the swivel. You knew that you were in danger.
Yeah.
Beyond keeping your head on the swivel, was like, oh, do I got to get out of town? Do I got to stop this lifestyle? Like, what did that cause?
Well,
how did that shift?
I didn't stay like in one place for too long. You know, like one of the last places I stayed was with a friend of mine that lived out in Lansing. I'd been staying with her off and on, but we had a falling out, and she was struggling. She had some medical issues outside of the drugs, but the drugs were like exacerbating her physical issues. And she actually went into a mental hospital for a little while. And when she came out, she had reached out to me, and like I had no place to stay, you know, and she like was willing to like open up. She had like moved some guy in like that she met at this mental hospital to give him a spot. And she like let me stay on the couch like temporarily because I had no other place to stay. And that's where I started, like, because he was really into the word. He was like a kinesiologist, he said, like from Michigan State. And he had a drug problem too, but he was trying to get his life under control. He knew he needed salvation. He had been an atheist, whatever. He had discovered Jesus and like was a firm believer. You know, he just hadn't let like a lot of the worldly stuff go yet. But he used to write scriptures on like notebook paper, and he'd like taped them up all over this apartment. Like it was like a crazy person's apartment. Yeah. But like it's crazy though, because some of those scriptures too are like, they're like locked in.
Yeah, that's biblical, man. That's
like
Old Testament. That's what he told them to do.
Yeah.
And when they came into the promised land, he was like, put it on the mantle, put it on, you know, write it on your kids. You know, so it's crazy, like the stuff that we might do or follow that is actually biblical. Like, yo, this is a crazy person's house.
Oh yeah, people come over. I remember people coming over. There was this rapper from Lansing that used to come around with this escort. Like she weaseled her way into this apartment, and that's why me and this guy that was writing the scriptures we ended up leaving because this prostitute like took over the apartment. I remember this rapper coming in and like taking pictures of like the walls. Like it was just crazy, you know, like we're all in there in candlelight and we got scripture all over the walls. And there's like all types of debauchery going on in the other room, and it was nuts. It was a nutty situation.
So you end up leaving.
I get this wave of like paranoia because, like I said, like in my life, I felt it was forfeit, you know, like I was already like, it was just a matter of time before I got. It's how I felt. And Lansing was like the last place I needed to be. Like it was probably the most dangerous place for me to be at the time. So like I said, I ended up ripping off this girl who let me stay there and took off. And
this is the girl.
This is the
girl, one
who
who came out of the mental spot and let you and homeboy stay.
Yeah.
Oh, so she was the one.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you empty her bank account.
Mm.
Does this happen before or after you just knew you were being pursued and you actually felt like
This is like right around that couple week span of time where it
okay?
was
Because I
like,
want you to get into that too.
oh
So
yeah,
you basically bit off the hand that was feeding you. You know,
yeah, yeah.
you robbed her um, because you had a plan, right? You were trying to get out of town, or
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't necessarily like a premeditated thing. It was like just this wave paranoia would come over me. Like I knew I had to go because I just like I distrusted everybody I was around,
yeah,
and I knew like these people were semi connected to the people that you know potentially want to take my life. They don't want to necessarily be associated, but like I didn't feel like I could trust anybody. And the longer I stayed in a place, the dicier it felt,
yeah.
and like the less comfortable I was to where I had to go. I had to get out. And I would keep coming back. Like I would jump, like I said, I was going from city to city, but I would keep coming back to this place. It was like for a couple of weeks. I would be there for a couple of days. And then it's like when people kind of figured out where I was at again, and like I'd dip out again. But yeah, I would like, there was a point where I couldn't do drugs. I didn't want to do any drugs anymore. Like the drugs just made everything worse. And
Like the paranoia.
yeah, yeah. I remember like the last time I think it really ever like shot up because I used drugs intravenously, right? And I remember they set me up like a speedball, like heroin and meth mixed up, and I did this shot, and I knew it was too much. Like I knew like it was like I felt like I was gonna die. And I started freaking out. Like, I'm like, it's too much. It's too much. And everybody in the room started laughing at me. And I was like, these people are like, these are not my friends.
Wow.
Like, these people are literally like laughing, like at the fact that,
I could be dying
like,
right
I
now.
could be dying right now. I could be dying right in front of you and you're laughing. And it was just, it just like, it was just crazy. It like broke something, and like I had to get out. I was actually at this point too when I was like, because there was so many people dying everywhere. Like one of my best friends had like overdosed and died in July of that year. While I had like taken this crazy like bus trip out to California as a way to escape. Like I took my sister's ashes out there, but it was like also like an escape, because I fully paranoid, felt like people were after my life, and
So you felt you were running. You were on the run when you went to California.
yeah, kind
But
of,
but
yeah.
you mentioned ashes. I don't think you mentioned that your sister passed.
Oh yeah, yeah. She passed when I was 30. She actually she died from complications of well, really like the ventilator is what killed her, but she had HIV, and the hospital didn't provide her with the retrovirals to get her white blood cell count back up. They gave her like, knowing she had HIV, they gave her like a regular, what they would give somebody with a healthy immune system,
Yeah.
like a regular, like a Z pack or
Yeah.
something. They gave her that.
And this is your older sister
This
that
is
you were
my,
close
yeah, the
with
one I
that
was
was doing
closest to.
drugs. And,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
So her immune system was shot, and then she wasn't getting enough oxygen to her brain. She's like had walking pneumonia, so they put her on this ventilator. They put her on the ventilator, and it caused the blood vessel to burst in her brain. And so they decided to take her off the ventilator. Like it wasn't it wasn't anything. I didn't have any type of decision in that.
Yeah.
Like, but then as soon as they took her off the ventilator, she passed.
And so you ended up with her ashes.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. And so California was.
California.
I mean, you just like.
Well, she had always wanted to move out. She had always wanted to move out there, but I had talked her into moving down to Florida instead, and it turned out to be a horrible situation. Because I was living with my baby sister down there, and the minute my sister got off the bus and showed up at the house, like she like refused to let my sister in the house because of her HIV status at the time, and so like my sister was struggling from the minute she was down there. Like I found her a place to stay, and like in the meantime, but it was with like a Pentecostal family, like, which was crazy. Like these people, like I gravitated towards these people. Like these people and I connected on a level like it was crazy. Like I wasn't doing drugs out there, you know,
Yeah.
like maybe smoking weed or whatever. I guess, you know, but not like
Yeah.
I wasn't out there. I was trying to like change my life a little bit when I was down in Florida. And they were going to give her a place, but in the meantime, while I was waiting, while she was at a bar, restaurant, waiting for me to come back with the like give her like the information, like, hey, you can stay here. I got to the bar and she was like, oh no, I met so and so. She met some guy that had a house on the Gulf and like moved in with this total stranger that she had just met like 10 minutes before. Wow. And then like at the time, Florida was handing out painkillers, like they were Pez, you know. So like she was off and running, and just it was like a horrible spiral that she was on. And she ended up back in Michigan, and it was a couple years later that she passed away. But I always felt like not guilty, but like she should never come down to Florida. If she would have just maybe done what she like wanted. Instead, I was like, no, Jen, come live down here with me. You know? But I wasn't in a place to like really help her. You know what I mean? I tried a little bit, but there's, you know.
So, you got the ashes. You're taking the trip with your sister to California. This is you on the run, or this is you just like
is like
on a
me
mission?
Just on a mission, but also to get away. And during that time, one of my best friends OD'd and died. But I was in South Central Los Angeles on 4th of July of 2018. I found myself in South Central, and I was like, I heard some gunshots.
So you like 25 minutes from me.
I didn't know.
You like in my neighborhood. You about 25 minutes away from me.
I met some
in 2018.
dude. I met some dude on the train, and like we went to a Jack in the Box, and he's like showing me like gunshot wounds. He's got scars, and like he's inviting me to a party, and like I started freaking out. I'm like, nah, like I hear some gunshots. I don't know if it's gunshots or fireworks. I'm like, man, I'm not in a safe space. I gotta go. Like, so I told him like peace out while he was in the Jack in the Box, and I'll jump back on the train. And it was just a nightmare situation of homelessness for like a week and a half in like San Francisco, and I didn't know where I was going to go. I was like torn. I was going to either go to Washington State, like head north on the bus, or I was going to head back to Michigan. And I got a bus ticket back to Michigan. And I was like, if it feels right, I'm going to like get off in the meantime. Because I was totally living like this base instinct existence at the time. Like I was totally motivated by like everything was impulse. Nothing was planned. Like it was like I would describe that to people, like I was living a base existence. Like just whatever impulse I had, I followed that. It was crazy way to live.
Wow. So you come back, and so you do end up back in Lansing?
I do end up back in Lansing.
Okay. Of course, it's still not the safest place for you to be. And the thing that I've observed so far is you seem to gravitate naturally to, I guess, the believers. But the non-believers gravitated to you. You know, just like how you was in South Central and this dude was just up on you, you know, but you gravitated to the believer almost like you felt comfortable. But then I also noticed that I'm already seeing like where the story is going, because I'm just like, the only place where he's probably safe is prison. And it's the only place where he actually like kind of pauses to listen to the gospel or to read the Bible or to pay attention to anything anybody has to say about Jesus. And so I'm just like, man, it just sounds like he's going back to prison.
Prison was the blessing.
Yeah.
Prison
I'm like,
where
wow.
the Lord started to speak, where the word just came alive. Like when I was locked up, the word this time literally like came alive. I'm like seeing my life in those pages. I'm like, this is for real.
It just speaks to how sometimes our torment and our bondage, like he's gentle when he's going through our deliverance process or our process of freedom, that he's careful not to just rip the Band-Aid off. And so I look at your situation and the situation of hundreds of stories I've heard on my couch where like I said, he's gentle, he's kind, he's merciful. So he just doesn't just pull every, like you're a Jenga. And so he's very careful of what he's going to pull off of you right now, because there are just some bondages that actually keep you in check. And obviously I look at prison as bondage, like that's what it is. And almost just to, if I'm gonna take a break from how heavy your story's getting, um, I was at church and my wife was just mentioning, like, man, it's crazy how you gravitated to and just formed quite a bond with an ex-con. Like, y'all are tight. Like, this is crazy. And she's kind of joking about it. But as we're getting into the car, this beautiful woman, looked like an angel, is like sprinting across from that lower parking level to the main parking. Like, she's literally like making a beeline to my wife. Like, hey, like she's like, I'm like, oh, we're at a sense. She's sprinting across the parking lot. She's probably got a prophetic word for my wife. And so she's literally like gliding. I'm like, this woman's an angel. She comes and she's just like, yeah, I have a word. And so she reads my wife's mail to the point where we open up the minivan and she's literally sitting on the edge of it weeping. Then she turns to me and now she's going to speak to me. This is right after she's teased me about my relationship with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I love prophetic words. And because I'm so deep in the closet, like, you're not going to tell me something I don't know. So it's just a great opportunity for me to have some confirmation. It's also a great opportunity for me to see how sharp you are. You know what I mean? So I'm listening. And she tells me, she said, you're going to write a book. So I'm just like, I've written 10 books. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, good. Like, you see it. You can see. And then she said, you're called to men in prison. And I'm like, I know, like, I have a mantle for deliverance. Like, I've been doing this for like 6-7 years at this point. I have books on deliverance. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, we see in part. So I'm like, oh, you close. But I was just like, oh, okay. You know, but in my mind, I'm thinking, like, I know she's not talking, like, I know I'm not called to literal prison ministry and the literal physical. I know that I'm called to people that are bound, people that are in psychological and spiritual mental bondage, prison.
But how do you know you're not called to actual, like, physical prison?
Like I said, you're not going to tell me something I already know because I speak to him. And so I'm saying, I know that she was seeing in part. I know that she didn't know that I had a deliverance ministry and I was already moving in that and in dealing with people in bondage. And so I was just making a connection to say, like, there are just levels of bondage that he's careful to remove you from because it could be for your protection. Mm-hmm. And so you being in prison actually was for your benefit and your protection. And your physical bondage is not much different than there are levels of freedom that you experience while you were in prison, that there are people that are never experienced physical prison, but they're in bondage mentally and spiritually. Mm-hmm. So much more than somebody who's actually in a cell. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so God just knows the level of freedom you can handle. And he knows the level of, you see it as bondage, but he might see it as a level of just protection, almost just like how the 10 Commandments were that for them. There was just kind of like just a level of protection to keep this tribe alive, you know, for this amount of time or whatever. But it just seems like prison was that for you.
Oh yeah, I mean, I felt free in there. I remember instances talking to, like, family while I was in there and listening to their problems and their stresses and like literally I'm like giving pep talks from inside prison. Like, I'm like trying to be inspirational, and I'm the one in prison, but I'm like really, like, I knew from the minute I was in there, I'm like, it saved my life. Like,
okay, so that's the point I want to make, but let's not jump ahead of ourselves. All right. Because we want to hit the story to what even put you there. You have a story, one of the scripture that says the wicked run when no one's chasing them. Mm-hmm. You know, and you run into Legion.
Deuteronomy 28.
Yeah, I want to hear that story. That's a part of you in your free time. You had this pocket full of cash that you had stolen from this young lady who had taken you in. And then you had a plan that you were going to execute because you knew that this was going to be like the movies, like, yo, this is gonna be our last gig before we go
the
straight.
last big
The,
heist.
yeah, the last
Yeah.
hurrah. You know what I'm saying? Like you had that in mind, and so
Yeah.
I want to hear those. You know, if you can put those stories in alignment, you know, to put us in prison, so we can go there.
Right. Well, we're definitely like almost there.
Okay.
Definitely almost there. But like right around the time after my buddy had killed himself, um, like I said, I had this like no desire to do drugs anymore, you know, and I was like seeing all these people dying around me. And I had access. I had a friend who worked with, I don't know if it was called the Red Project or what it was, but they handed out Narcan kits. And I was a ambassador for this program in Grand Rapids. So between this guy and myself, I started collecting all these Narcan kits and like handing them out to people, like dozens of them, just to prevent overdoses, you know? And it was like the one good thing that I was doing like at that time, right before I went to prison. But I still like I couldn't steal anymore. Anytime I would do something like that or be like I guess doing like a unlawful thing, I felt like I was being pursued. Like I said, I was already feeling like my head was on a swivel. But I started like noticing people noticing me in like this uncommon way.
This is, you had already been in the paranoia stage.
Yeah. I'm
This is
already like
different.
fully in the paranoia stage, but it's like I'm like noticing this and it's happening like in like more frequency. And like literally like I stopped a guy like in the middle of the night that I knew, I was convinced he was following me. And like I had a hammer I had picked up, and I walked up to him. I said, if you let me get this close to you again, like you're gonna regret it. And he just looked at me. He's like, I don't even know you. I said, I know you don't know me, but why are you following me? And he didn't say anything. And it was just like, it was just eerie to me, because it was just like, he was super calm, you know, like it was just a unreal experience. But the thing you were talking about with the Legion, I was like I said, I felt pursued, and I was in this shopping mall. I think it was in Lansing, and it was just like a young black man. And I asked him, why are you guys following me? I'm like, what's the point? Like, what is this? Why don't this stop? What are you doing? What's going on? You know, he said, this doesn't stop until somebody dies. Like,
And is he saying it like, this doesn't stop until somebody dies? Like,
yeah, like
this
it's not
doesn't
gonna
stop until.
No, it wasn't like that. It
No?
was like in a like, this isn't gonna stop until somebody dies.
It's like, I'm on a mission. Like, this guy is clearly
Yeah, like
being
it
used.
was me or whoever. You know what I mean? Like, and it was creepy. Like I felt like I was like in like whatever. I don't know what was going on. Like I was super paranoid already. And it was like, then at that point, after hearing that, I was like, I was in some type of game. What is this all about, you know? And looking back on it, I felt like it was like I had to die. Not like physically, but I had to die.
Wow.
You know?
Wow. Yeah.
That's what like I came to, like thinking about it after the fact.
Yeah.
Like months and
And
years later.
this is the same kid you asked who he was, and he said, we're Legion?
Legion. And like what's crazy is like there was one characteristic. Anytime these people like pursued, like they had like an eagle. Like it wasn't like the American eagle emblem. It was like an eagle on their clothing. Like I started calling them that. Like these American, like people. I would like the American eagle people. I was using expletives, you know, obviously, but I would like refer to it when I would be talking to like people that knew me. I would be talking about these American eagle people, and I like would see like these like black chargers. It was black chargers everywhere. Wow. Like following me, like legit. Like I'm like, I didn't think I was totally insane. I might have been losing my mind, but I didn't think I was totally insane. Yeah. I mean, I remember pulling up, like walking at one intersection, and somebody like, in this car like had like a mic, like suspects in you know, he was undercover or something. Yeah. But he was like paying all types of attention to me. I was like, I didn't know what this was, you know. And everybody's like, you're schizophrenic, you know. I was like, I'm not. I feel like I'm just hyper aware of my situation. You know, like I had to be, like where I was at in my life at the time and how like out of control it was. But it's like I didn't want to do drugs. I had no desire for that after all my friends laughing in my face when I thought I was dying. Like I didn't want to do them anymore. And literally, I couldn't keep any anyways because everything I had, I kept losing. Like in Deuteronomy 28, like the hole in my bag.
Yeah.
Like I talked about that money that I had. Like I had taken this money from this person to get out of town, to get on a bus. And I got so paranoid, I didn't even take the bus ticket to the end destination. I jumped off 30 miles away from the end destination and ended up having to walk because I had, all my bridges are burnt. So I'm ended up walking, stopped at a grocery store to get whatever, something to drink. I remember buying a flashlight, like a $20 little flashlight.
Just so you can see through
Just
the
so
night
I
as
was
you walk.
walking through the dark,
Wow.
on the side of the road, and had a backpack. And I remember leaving the store, and I was like 20 minutes away, and I go to get the flashlight out of my backpack, and the flashlight's gone. So I'm like backtracking, and I get close to the store, and I pull out my money that I had. Like I knew I had a couple $100 at least, and like cigarettes and all that, and it was all gone. And the money I pulled out was all Monopoly money. It was pink and green and blue and yellow. I wasn't playing Monopoly.
Why would
Like
you
I
have
had never
Monopoly
been,
money in
I'd
your
never
pocket?
been anywhere like to where I had Monopoly. I don't know where it came from. Like it was like
Like, Lord, when I
supernatural.
get to heaven,
like my, yeah, it was like
what was that?
It was the Devourer. Like it was like everything was being devoured.
And I mean, when you speak of that time of your life, you speak about being under some type of curse for disobedience.
Yeah, yeah.
That's around that time you were
Mm-hmm.
feeling like, oh, this is all happening because, where did that come from?
Well, no, it's really like, no, because I hadn't even cracked open that Bible yet. I had been talking to this guy, and he's talking to me about angelic things. We're talking about how he was fixated on like circumcision at the time. Like that was his thing. Like this is this evil that's happening in the world. He had this obsession with like that child mutilation. But like I hadn't been in my Bible yet. I had gotten this Bible from this guy and started carrying it around, but I hadn't read it yet. On this walk that I took that I finally ended up in my hometown, I was like exhausted. Like half the day, it took me hours and hours to walk to this town, like a whole day.
Yeah, 30 miles. That's a track.
Yeah. And like I was like, I had no help. I'd stopped at a Burger King. I remember stopped at a Burger King. It was like the first restaurant when I got in this town. And I had like Wi-Fi service on my phone or something. So I started trying to call people. Nobody was picking up. An ex-girlfriend of mine was like, call 911 and tell them you're having a heart attack. Tell them you need help. They'll come get you. Like an ambulance will come get you.
Yeah.
And it just pissed me off. Nobody was coming to get me. Wow. You know what I mean? Like I literally have to call 911 on myself to get help. And so I spent that night, I like broke into about like 5 houses that night and stole everything under the sun. Like slept outside in a park. I probably broke into like, it was a couple of houses and like 10 cars, something like that. Just looking for whatever, looking for a vehicle, looking for money, I had just a slew. I think just a slew of just trash, like crap that wasn't valuable, but I could hustle it, sell it, whatever. I just was like so lost. Ended up the next day, like I said, I couldn't even get a peanut butter sandwich from like an old high school friend. Couldn't steal because I would get that conviction and I felt like chased. Like
you said the next day.
Like this is like
because you went on a slew.
Right. But then slept a couple hours like in a park, and went further into my hometown. And like I said, I couldn't. I was in a grocery store and stole a granola bar, and the minute I did that, I was like, it was on. I was like being pursued. Felt like the cops were on me. I was like super paranoid, and I like went down this alley, and there was a bike just sitting there, like right there, unlocked. So I jump on it and actually went, like I told you this earlier, I like biked to my mother's house. I actually saw my mother outside, hadn't spoken to her for a couple of years, and like didn't know. No, it wasn't, that's not true. I did speak to her once. Like I spoke to her once in that couple of years, and I went and kind of confessed as to what was going on because I thought I was going to die. It was a day I thought I was going to die. Showed up at my mom's house, and I was so exhausted. I fell asleep on her couch, passed out, and I woke up in the hospital. like she had just like had her boyfriend bring me to the hospital and drop me off, like rather than just let me sleep.
Oh, so you woke up in the lobby of the hospital?
No, like I woke up in a hospital bed with them trying, like a needle in my arm, like them trying to inject me with something.
Yeah.
And I started screaming and like they were like physically trying to hold me down. And like I was like freaking out, and I couldn't walk. I remember them like pushing me in a wheelchair down to the lobby because I couldn't stand on my own. I don't know what that was about, but the security guard of the hospital, they literally pushed me out of the front doors of the hospital, and I like sat on a bench till like sunrise, and like the security guard's like, you gotta get out of here, sun's up, you gotta go. And I hadn't spoken to her after that, you know, like I didn't expect anything from her, but like I was like, wow, like I stopped at my mother's. I hadn't seen her in a long time, kind of confessed to what was going on in my life, like that I felt like I was, you know, it was about to be over. You know, I knew like, you know, I wanted to say sorry. I think that's what it was, why I showed up that time. But this time, it was months later, show up on the bike, but I didn't stop because I think I was like, what came to mind too is the fact that I just got dumped in that hospital, you know, when I had passed out, because I had probably been up for days at that time when I showed up at her house. So I kept going, and I was like, I had no other place to go. So I was going to bike those 30 miles back to Grand Rapids to the one place I knew I could crash out for the night. And in between Holland and Grand Rapids, I like passed this factory, and there was just a parking lot full of cars. And I was like, I'm going to just see somebody's got to have keys in this vehicle. And sure enough, the first vehicle I went to was a Cadillac Escalade. Had the keys in it. I jumped in it and was off and running. And that's when like the plan kind of formulated, when I ended up driving to Grand Rapids. And that I'd stopped at a supermarket on the way, shoplifted a BB gun, like a realistic looking BB gun. And I was like, I'm robbing a bank tomorrow, and I'm getting out of here. I'm gonna get my life right. But I had no help. I had no way to get there, to get to that place.
You needed to rob a bank.
That's what I felt like. I needed to.
Yeah.
And I knew I could do it. So it was like, I was on. I even knew I had been plotting on this one for the longest. Like I knew exactly where I was going to go. And yeah, that next morning, about like 8:30 in the morning, I was almost out of gas. There's like pop cans in the back of this Escalade. I felt bad, so bad. There was like 2 car seats in the back of this Escalade. Like some work clothes, like this dude's old work,
some
like
family guy.
Yeah, it's a family guy, you know. Like and it wasn't a nice Cadillac either. Like they probably paid $1,000 for that thing, you know. But
you just messed my whole picture up. I had it black. I had it iced out with like chrome rims.
No,
it was black on black.
2000.
It had 26s on
no.
it.
It was an old Escalade. Like it was dope back in the day, but this one was busted. You know? It looked nice still, but like, yeah, but that's besides.
So he had cans in the back. Did you recycle them for gas money or something?
I did. I stopped to go get some gas money.
Yeah.
And I had slept for like 3 hours or something in the parking lot of a gas station, and I left. I left the gas station fully ready and determined. It was about 8:30 in the morning, and I was going to go hit this bank, and that was the plan. I knew from that bank to Grand Rapids, it'd take me about 14 minutes, driving about 80, you know, like super easy, super fast, no fuss, no muss, you know, like that was the plan. And from there, ditch that and jump on a bus. The bus station is like 2 minutes from where I would have ditched the truck. Like, had the plan.
Yeah.
God had other plans for me. So I literally like fell asleep at the wheel, like nodded off, like fell asleep at the wheel. After sleeping some hours, ended up in oncoming traffic, overcorrected, rolled the Escalade a couple times into the ditch, ended up right side up. I jumped out of the window, couldn't get out the door, jumped out the window, crawled up this ditch, and a school bus comes by. These 2 ladies, there's an empty school bus, these 2 ladies, and they're like, are you all right? And I couldn't breathe because all my ribs were cracked. All were, like, you could see it. Like, you could see, like, the imprint from the center console. All my ribs were crushed, and I couldn't breathe. Yeah. And I asked these ladies for a cigarette. Like, you got a cigarette? Like,
Wow.
they're like, we don't smoke. They're like driving a school bus.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
you got a cigarette? It was crazy. So I end up like hobbling. I knew I had to get out of there. I
Yeah.
end up hobbling through the woods, and first house I came to, and there was 2 vehicles in the driveway. One was like a newer Tahoe, one was an older Pathfinder. Both had the keys in them. And me, I picked the Tahoe.
Of course.
Yeah, it was newer, it was nicer.
Yeah, upgrade.
Yeah.
And
I
you
mean, it
couldn't
all
breathe.
happened.
You're struggling to breathe.
Happened, yeah, it all
Wow.
happened. Well, I hid there for a minute, like, because I couldn't breathe. So I hid in the back of this Tahoe for a second. It was a good 10, 15 minutes, I think I waited. And finally I got up and put her in reverse. And I saw the guy who had actually, he was the one that called the police. He had like chased me through the woods and I didn't realize it. And he's in these people's front yard. And I'm so glad I didn't hit him, because I was close. Like, because he was trying to jump in front of the truck to get me to stop. And I was like, there was no stopping. If he would have jumped, I would have hit him. Like, and I would have kept going. But I ended up, like, there was a purse in the truck. There was a gun in the purse. I'm like, it's meant to be. I'm on the way. I was headed, because I lost my BB gun in the accident. Right. So I ended up heading, like, towards the bank, which is also towards the county jail, which was like, not the way to go.
So you had like, busted ribs.
Yeah. Well, not just busted ribs. I had a broken vertebrae in my neck and a cracked vertebrae in my back.
But you were still sticking to the plan.
I still.
Like, I'm about to still hit this bank.
Still on my way. Yeah. Still on my way. But I ended up in a little slight high-speed chase. Because, like I said, the county jail was like less than 5 miles away from where all this happened. And they responded in force. I ended up in the hospital and in a wheelchair after that for almost like 6 months. Wheelchair and a neck brace. And
that's a whole nother level of bondage. Like,
yeah.
Like, you're sitting still.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't move my head. Like, I was like really...
Yeah.
Yeah, it was something. But I mean, immediately, like, I was given a Bible day one. Like, I need a book to read. And one of the COs I actually went to high school with, he brought me a Bible. And like, I think my buddy, I sent him that Bible. He probably still has that Bible, because that Bible was like in the time that I was in that county jail before I went to prison, and just like torn through everything underlined. Because there's like a program too that, like, after I got cleared by medical, they had like a Bible pod, like a little like 12-man room where like you're seeking the Lord to like put you in this place. And they have like church workers, pastors or whatever that would come in like 8 to 3:30 every day and like teach. And it was just super good, because everybody was in there like learning, like spending, where 2 or more are gathered.
Yeah, it sounds safe too.
Well, I mean, I wasn't worried about people in the jail or anything like that. You know what I mean? And I had opportunities to do that program before while being locked up, and I was like, I had no interest. But now it was like the Bible literally, because I was in like a 1-man room for those months leading up to beyond Christmas that year. But they wouldn't let me around anybody because of my physical condition, like if in case I did have enemies in there or whatever. But that's when a friend kind of directed me to Deuteronomy, and just like kind of opened my eyes to the stuff that was going on was like spiritual. Like I knew that from like the encounter with that dude saying, I'm Legion. Like I was like, I know that's out of the Bible. Like, but I was like, my eyes were open to the fact, like the curses for disobedience, and like, man, this is like my life this past like 6 months or more. This is like what I'm fleeing when nobody's pursuing, like I can't keep anything, because like, you
saw yourself.
I was the borrower, I was the tail, not the head. It was like fully, that was like what I was living.
And you had to live that, and then he puts you in this position to show you what you were living. He showed you yourself. The Word. Only Holy Spirit can do that. Wow.
And it was really like, I mean, it was such a blessing. The time spent in the Word and like spent in prayer, like just my experiences in prison with like the favor that I experienced. That was just, it was totally supernatural. Cause I'm like, you know, I mean, I'm pretty personable,
Yeah.
but like I was developing like relationships with odd relationships with like heads of gangs like that. Like I have no business. Like we're just not the same. You know what I mean? Like we don't even do the same type of thing in the prison. You know what I mean? Like they're, you know, whole different, whole different level of what they've got going on in there compared to what I've got going on in the prison.
Yeah.
But yet, like I had like a level of respect given that was totally like unwarranted. You know what I mean? It was like God in that because I didn't do anything to deserve it. You know?
You didn't come in there and take your shirt off and bust somebody's head through a
Right,
wall
right.
to just
Well,
say, "Hey, don't mess with me."
right. I had like one of my like a homeboy from prison. Like I knew him from, I didn't know him, but I knew we were from the same hometown. Um, he even came up to me. He was like one of the heads of like the Latin Kings. He comes up to me. He's like, "Cam, you got a banger? You got a banger on you?" He's like a knife, they call them bangers. And I was like, I started laughing. I was like, "What are you talking about, dude?" And he's like, "That's what I've been hearing. Like you're carrying a knife on you." Like I thought it was hilarious, but like that's like the
He was
word.
carrying the sword, baby.
Yeah, yeah. But like other
Wow.
people, like
In the spirit, they saw you. They saw you with a
yeah,
sword, a dagger. Wow. Favor.
yeah. It was good. It was good.
It's crazy though. Like I said, you're in this level of bondage, but it's protective bondage. You're even in a protective bondage in a place where you can even heal physically properly. Your ribs, so nobody can touch you, nobody can mess with you while you're in your healing process. But it's wild how that was the safest place for you to be. You know, and then you're in this place where you have this honor that is undeserved. Like you didn't earn that. Like you got to earn that in prison. Like you know what I'm saying? Like you got to earn that, and you earn that the hard way. Through probably getting additional time. And so here you are with people are seeing you differently because they see you with a knife when you don't even have one. Like
Killa Cam.
yeah,
It's Killa
yeah.
Cam.
So the crazy thing is that before I even knew this guy's story, I'm just like, I find out his name is Cam, and we're close to the same age. I'm a little older than Cam, but I came up in the '90s with hip hop, and I was living in New York at the time, so I just thought Cameron, and so I nicknamed him Killa Cam, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna go holler at Killa Cam. And then Linda's like, "Oh, you got to hear his testimony. How he has X amount of felonies and he was in prison." And I'm thinking like, "Oh, you know what I'm saying?" I'm like, I didn't want to be that person who's just like, "Remember what you used to did, what you used to do, whatever." And so I felt so like, whoa, I should have never called him that. You know what I'm saying? And then when I told him, I was like, "Man, look, I didn't know your story. I wasn't trying to, He was like, "Nah, man, like that's what they call me." Like it was kind of just like I've heard that before, and I actually know who Cameron is, and so, but it was just a funny. It's kind of how I came to know that you had this testimony is from the Killa Cam thing, and so that's what I call him. I call him Killa Cam. He doesn't take offense to it. Um, but yeah, it's crazy how I came to know your story. But you're locked up, but you're safe. You're growing in the Lord, or your eyes are being open to things. Obviously, all this is His design, so we can see. My goal is in Him telling His testimony is for you to see God's divine hand in orchestrating this situation. And so we can already see that prison is actually for His protection. Prison is also allowing him to sit still so that he can take in what he needs to take in so that his heart can be softened and he can receive what he needs to receive. Even the injury, is what initially set you still to really start underlining that word. And so there's a lot of things that happen to us supernaturally, and we just know it's the enemy.
I was a stiff-necked person.
Yeah.
and he broke it.
And
You know
that's
what I mean?
how he does it. But a lot of us are so stuck on, oh, that's Old Testament. Like for somebody to even hear that you quote in Deuteronomy and you even read Deuteronomy, they'd be like, oh, we in the new covenant. And I'm like, yo, you guys don't understand. I'm grateful for my understanding and knowledge of warfare and spirit realm and deliverance ministry because I realize that that stuff in the Old Testament, you got to understand that there's a difference between spiritual principles and Mosaic law.
Well, like look at like Paul. He's talked about what Scripture was good for. You know,
Yes.
reproof and all
Yes.
that. He's talking about the
He's
Old
talking about the Old
Testament.
Testament. There was no New Testament. And so that's
Exactly.
why I try to tell people
Exactly.
is understand that a principle is something that is a divinely set up spirit realm law that will not and cannot ever change. And so you can bank on this, you know. Now, a law that's been fulfilled, that's one thing. But when we talk about principles, the purpose of them obeying the commands that Moses was giving them was he would say that you can live long and your children will do well and their children will do well. But he said it's because you're doing what is right in the sight of the Lord. And so it's not so much about the law. It's about doing what's right in the sight of the Lord. Or else he was saying like your children is going to struggle. And so that's generational curses as well. And so you got to understand that there's spiritual principles and that you can't fulfill those. So that will always be generational curses and covenant are separate. They're not the same thing. So just understanding the difference between that just takes another level of biblical study, but it's just a level of revelation. And if you haven't received that yet, just ask for it. I mean, there are books that you can read, but just you need more revelation so he can show you that. But for you to be in prison on Old Testament and just realizing this is me, that's Holy Spirit led. Because like I said, people are typically they're in the Gospels, they're in the New Testament. They're believing that that's behind us when the Lord he has you in Deuteronomy. He has somebody specifically point you to Deuteronomy.
I mean, the dreams was when this really started in prison. The things like I heard some things coming out of, like Paul Keith talked about it too. I don't hear the audible voice of the Lord, but I've heard audibly things coming like waking me out of sleep. A couple times, some phrases that they're only coming from the Lord. It's not coming from me.
I mean, it's His word.
Yeah.
Man, it's powerful. But back to you're in your process. When did you receive Him? When did you receive salvation? How did that come about? When was the turning point while in prison that you just was like, this is what I'm doing with my life?
I mean, I think it was when I was in that cell, when I was first in the wheelchair too. It was
So that initial 6 months, you already
praying to God.
knew.
I mean, I knew I knew there was a better way. I knew there was a narrow path, and I was not walking on it. And I knew my life was forfeit. So it was His. He saved me. He's the only reason I'm still here. You know what I mean? So I knew my life needed to be lived for Him. It's been a refining. It's been a process too. Still, it's a process. Yeah. Like I said, when I got out, I fell back into some old habits, real easy, some old patterns, real quick, real easy.
So let's not jump out of prison that quick. And I only say that just because your story, it threw me a curveball because I realized the dates when you were in prison. You were in prison during COVID.
Yeah.
That just makes that's a whole nother level of real, and even a whole nother level of why you need to write the book. Just because COVID is something that so many can relate to and so many dealt with, and COVID put so many in bondage. You know what I'm saying? And while you were in a physical prison that was mandatory, many of us were also in our homes that became physical prisons that became mandatory. And many of us in these physical prisons found the Lord. Many of us in these mandatory house prisons either found the Lord or we were tormented by demons, and we were the 3 Hebrew boys, or we were, the people that got burnt up in that fire. But many of us during that season, especially those of us that were in California or New York or in those countries that were really on lockdown, we were in prison too. We was in prison with you.
Well, I think it was like a wheat in the chaff type time too. Like it
Mm-hmm.
was a sifting. The people that were really like for the Lord, like
Yeah.
they're gonna seek Him and cling to Him in
Yeah.
that time.
Yeah.
And the people that aren't, like you found out real quick what your heart is really about.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
what is it about you and about your earthly fears? You know, like so it was definitely that for a lot of people out there.
A lot of people picked up their Bible for the first time and underlined. Like a lot of, and so there's just a lot of parallel. As much as you might think that your story is not relatable or someone can't relate, he might think like, well, if you ain't been in prison, you can't relate. Well, you were in prison during COVID. And so we was all in prison during that time. We were all in bondage. You know what I'm saying? We were all in a mandatory situation like that. And so you'll find that so many more people can relate. You'll find how many people found the Lord during COVID, during that bondage time, during that time where they couldn't do nothing else but choose to succumb to the fear or pick up the Bible. You know what I mean? And so you'll find that so many more people can relate to your story, but it's not for you to determine that. You know, that's Holy Spirit knows who this is going to sit with and who's going to relate to this. And so it's your job to just write and tell it. But just know that the people that are going to receive and relate to your story are not so much just people that have been in prison. You know what I mean? You bring so much more value with your story than you even know. And the people that your story is for such a broader group than you even know. And I even myself, I think of my story and I've hesitated, to share it because I'm just like, man, like nobody could relate to what I've seen. Like I'm in behind the scenes in the entertainment industry. If I tell my story, it's just an expose. Like I kind of looked at it like that, but he showed me something. He showed me that I would say you and I were born and raised in Egypt and we walked through the wilderness. Well, there are people there were kids that were born in the promised land. And if you remember Judges 3, the Lord was like, look, I'm going to leave these nations here because those of you who didn't come through the wilderness, y'all don't know how to fight. I got to leave them here to test you so that you can learn self-defense. And so I believe that those of us who came through the wilderness and who have fought spiritual battles, that's all you did. You fighting through like the drugs and the flesh and all the things that you fought through, those were spiritual battles. So that was your wilderness season. You were fighting these spiritual battles. You were learning, your hands were learning how to fight. And so there are people that will need to learn how to fight because they haven't had the lessons that you've had. And so you sharing your lessons is you sharing your inheritance. You're imparting to them. And so I know that I'm called to teach people how to fight spiritual battle. And the people that I'm called to, I always thought that it was those people that were not saved. But it's actually those people that are in the promised land. Some of you have been in the promised land your whole life. Some of you were born into church, into the spirit-filled ministry, speaking in tongues from age 6, watching miracle signs and wonders your whole life, been in the secret place since you were 10. Like, these are the people that I believe that he's calling us to. And that's why the body's so important. That's why your story's so important, because there are people that need to hear this stuff because they need to learn about spiritual warfare. They need to learn about spiritual battle. They need to be tested. And so I believe that we're those people that are kind of like the drill sergeants and the people that are going to expose these people to realities. I look at the person that's born in the promised land as the silver spoon kid. Like, he don't have no street smarts. And so I used to say, Lord, why did you take so long? Like, I wasn't really saved till I was 40. Like, why you wait so long? Why you couldn't give me this kind of upbringing? And that's when he showed me, like, look, some of us have to walk this path because it's for others. Some of us have to walk this path because you're considered like the fathers, and you're supposed to give this inheritance to those that come from you. And so your story is powerful. Our stories are powerful. Those of us that have been through the wilderness season and have fought spiritual battles, because we can teach others how to fight spiritual battles. You can speak to cats that that don't know how to fight the spiritual battle and haven't overcome drugs and the debauchery and all the things that you fought and had victory over. So everything that I've had the victory over, I'm authorized to teach
Mm-hmm.
people how to have the victory over those things. And so you just never know how far reaching your testimony can go or is needed. And it's not your job to determine that. It's just your job to be a witness. And being a witness is that. It's telling your story about how he saved you. And in that, you're sharing the gospel. But I really think that even though your testimony might sound grimy or edgy or, very street, and it might seem like people can't relate, but I just think that anybody in the world who went through COVID should be able to be ministered to from this. And I just think that maybe knowing that, that's when you look and say, oh, this is what I'm going to include. This is what I'm going to lean more on this. And I just think that you sharing, how you were affected by COVID and how that affected, you guys while you were in prison and just how that played out for you, which seemingly is another world to us,
Mm-hmm.
but us not realizing how we were held captive, even if it's just in front of the TV screen, receiving all the fear that was coming through it. Like you were too. You know what I'm saying? And so I just think it's necessary to share those elements of your story because that does make things more relatable, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So you were in prison and you were watching the news like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So you had fear, you had threats of this vaccination.
Yeah, yeah.
You
I
know?
mean, it was like there was a lot of felt like intimidation to get it. A lot of times, um, it was a scary. It was. I mean, I wouldn't say it just was tough. I wouldn't say it wasn't like scary. I didn't have fear during that time, but it was like they were pumping it across the TV channels, and there was a lot of it was all around. It's like it was in the air, like especially when it first popped off because you're seeing the ticker on the bottom of the TV with like the body counts, and it's just like this is real.
And then you got it.
Yeah, I did get it. Like in the first wave when it was like the first strain or whatever, to where like my whole body. I remember thinking my bunkie, he was gonna get upset because I was shaking the whole bunk all through the night because I couldn't stop shaking, and my teeth were chattering in my head, and I just remember praying through the night, like like this, I knew like the Lord didn't bring me to that point to let some virus like take me out, So I knew he was gonna get me through it, but it definitely like I prayed through the night, like the first night, and I think by day 2, it was like slight flu-like symptoms, but there was still people around me that they were having full-blown panic attacks, like grown men, like who really thinking their life is like there's about to end. And even the COs, like if you're in somebody's freaking out like that, they remove you, And at the time, they were taking guys. If you test positive, they'd take you, put you in an area, basically like you were being punished, like a quarantine area. So like you were sick, but they also didn't know what to do with you, and they would put you in like these orange jumpsuits that were basically like that's like what you would be buried in. They would just throw you in a hole in this orange jumpsuit. And then there was so many of those people. Like the cases were just adding up. They started bringing back the orange jumpsuit guys and putting them back in with us. This is like we're all sick too. So like, so it was just a matter. Like we all thought we were gonna end up in orange jumpsuits.
Wow.
It was just waiting it out. Like nobody really knew what was gonna happen with it.
Yeah.
Like I felt fine, but there was the people. Like I knew it was affecting certain people differently. Overweight people, diabetics,
Absolutely.
people with pre-existing conditions.
Yeah.
And there was plenty of that, so there's a lot of fear, And then you got the people that work there, the corrections officers, they're walking around like enforcing masks, like we're the ones bringing in the COVID into the facility, but they shut down visits, like, so we had no contact with the outside world, and they started limiting our movement to where what little freedom you had in the prison to like get exercise and get fresh air, they took that away from you. And like that was like keeping down the spread by keeping us locked in like littler rooms and littler spaces where it was just like, you know, like when people have the flu, like they do the same thing. They quarantine a whole unit and they won't let you out. They just keep you there until the flu or whatever sickness, you know, takes its course. But this was like a year and a half they did that or something.
So where's your mindset? Because you're at this point, you've already died. You know, you've given them your life. You've determined that this is where I'm at. Do you ever consider, like, had I not mentally, where would I be if I was in prison during this time, but I wasn't in the Word and I hadn't surrendered my life?
I'd probably been on drugs in there.
Yeah.
Like drugs in there is like super, like it's just like it's everywhere, you know? Yeah. Like it's actually more prevalent, like easier to find in there, but they're different kind. Like it's like they have chemicals now that they'll spray on paper, and like they bring sheets of paper in. And there's people making hundreds of thousands of dollars in prison. And people fully addicted to drugs in there. Like it's a whole industry.
And so that's another thing you were protected from and shielded from. Wow. Wow. Are there any supernatural or any conversion stories or any revelations that you received while you were in there that, like, you had to go through just a metamorphosis while you were in there? Like, I know that once you got out and you enrolled in school and your life starts to change, what would you say the metamorphosis was or the process was from you coming into prison and then you getting out?
Well, like the first half of this last time, this 4 years, like the first half, I isolated a lot. Like I just wanted to be in the Word, and I didn't associate. You know what I mean? There's like not a lot of people seeking the Lord in there, you know. And then the people that are, you know, it's like it's just I had to use kind of like some discernment with who I wanted to be around and who I was going to share with, and I just didn't have a lot of motivation to be out there.
Yeah.
Like I just kind of kept to myself. Like it was like there was people I shared my testimony with, but people weren't really like vibing with me with somebody who was talking about prison. Like, man, this is a blessing. Like, I'm so glad I'm here. I'm alive. Like, they're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like they quickly, like, people don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
Like, they don't, you know, they're thinking about the years they got to play out yet in there and, like, what they're going to do or what tattoos they're going to get or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, what kind of a cook up they're going to make that night, you know? Like, they're not really thinking about, like,
eternity.
Yeah, they're not. They're not. That's not. I mean, there's definitely some, but like the first like almost 2 years, man, I just like kind of isolated. I got fat. I gained like I was fatter than I ever been. Like, to where this little gangbanger from Grand Rapids started calling me Big Belly Cam. Every time he see me, what's up, Big Belly Cam? I'm like, no, that is not it. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. So I started on like a health and fitness transformation while I was in there, and like started getting fit, and then just kind of like started to love like exercising the body along with the mind, you know.
So using the Word, taking care of your body.
And that's when a lot of like the favor like really started showing up, because I was like, you know, I was working out with the head of one gang, and like certain gangs they're under the same like whatever. So certain gangs are cool with other gang, you know. There wasn't like gang wars anyways, but like I just ended up somehow or another, I was like cool with everybody. It didn't matter what color, what city, or whatever they were. It's like I was cool with everybody. And it just like, and it opened up an opportunity to really talk about the Lord with people too. Like people that would never, they just wouldn't come up in conversation with any of their people. You know what I mean? Like, so it's, and I still like, I mean, I don't talk to him, but I'm like still like have contact with a couple of those people. Like my one guy, his mother actually has like a prison ministry where she like gets people like to write inmates, and they kind of like help them out with like little care packages and whatnot.
Yeah.
But she through her ministry, they actually, like when I came down here, because I was kind of concerned like how I was gonna finance. I mean, I wait tables, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't have like a big bankroll, you know, waiting
Mm-hmm.
tables, especially where I was waiting tables at the time. But they blessed me with literally like I had everything I needed to get down here, everything I needed for my tuition for the first trimester coming down here. Everything was provided for. My sister had said, you know, we'll give you a month, whatever, before you pay us rent. So you can get situated or whatever. I was like, I don't even need that. Like, boom, here you go. Like, let's roll.
You know what the Lord is showing me as you're speaking? There's this, like, He showed me on my life, like, favor has become currency for me in the kingdom. Like if I need $500 for a particular thing, that person can just have favor and say, "Man, just give me 150." You know what I'm saying? Like that's favor and it's currency, right? And so I'm careful to ask Him for money because I'm asking Him for another God essentially to solve my problem. So I just ask Him to help me with this situation, right? Well, what He's showing me with you is that you have favor, but your favor is your harp. If you think about David and how he got positioned into Saul's camp, or he got before kings. You know, he got into place like those gang leaders are kings.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Your favor got you into places that you would have never been able to get, especially with the color of your skin. Let's keep it real. You know what I'm saying? Your favor, he's showing me like that's a harp. Like the harp basically symbolizes that thing that allows you access. It's the key. And so the fact that David could play that harp the way that he could, and he had a reputation of playing it the way that he could, that's what got him in the door, you know, to be able to serve Saul. And so he's shown me that, you know, my hand skill and the reputation that I have for my hands is what puts me before the celebrity, like the kings and the people of influence, to be able to do what I do. But it's just to get me in the door. It's to get me in that place where I would have never been able to get, and also a place where he may not have been able to have access had he used me to get there. And so there's just this level of favor on your life that allows you access to things and people and places that you normally would not have had. And so you was playing favor like a harp in prison. And so I believe that even when you got out, like that favor was still, you were still playing that thing, strumming it like a harp, you know, all the way to Atlanta, to paying tuition, to being able to pay rent right away. And so I know it's still with you. You know what I'm saying? He shows me things like that, and I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna make sure that, you know, I get some impartation prayer from Cam after this, because he got a special layer of favor on his life. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that just, like I said, that's a little side note. So you tell us about your, you know, I guess you was deep in the word. You was already converted, speaking and sharing the Lord with others. Basically just waiting until your time to get out. You determined you were going to go to ministry school.
I mean, I didn't know about the ministry school as of yet while I was in there.
Okay.
Like my sister sent me one of Pastor Brian's books, a book called Divine Encounters.
Okay.
So I think I'd probably sent her a letter or two talking about some of the wild stuff that I've experienced. Maybe some of the dreams, like, and she sent me that. And she sent me a book by Watchman Nee. That was really, like, a really good book.
So, Divine Encounters by Brian Guerin, right?
Yes. And
just going to put a little plug in there. Divine Encounters by Brian Guerin, and the other book is, you said Watch?
Breaking of the Outer Man and Release of the Spirit by Watchman Nee.
Wow.
Super good.
Wow. Yeah, man, it's powerful stuff. And you think about, these are people sharing their testimony. You know what I mean? And just a little side note, because I just know that those of you that are from a sin that know this gentleman right here, I feel like we gravitate to one another because people that have those stories that other people might not be able to relate to, specifically spiritual type stuff, like where you've encountered the demonic or the angelic or just something supernatural that someone might think you're crazy if you actually told them the full gamut of what you went through and the story. That's my thing. You know what I'm saying? I feel like that's why I was just like, every time I saw a Cam, I'd be like, just trying to get more out of them, you know? But if you're one of those people, if you haven't met me yet, like I'm asking you to approach me and to tell me your testimony. Like I'm into that. And I probably want to have you on here, but I really love to hear the stories about the supernatural. You know, I don't need a book to confirm it for me because of how much I experience in deliverance ministry and how much I've seen. People wouldn't believe me when I tell them about some of the things I've seen and experienced, but I love to hear those stories. And I find that Ascend is just one of those places where people have experienced the supernatural to just a whole nother level.
It's ripe. It's
Yeah,
ripe
super right. And I feel like I can just point to any person in the room and they could probably give me a blow your mind type of story. And so I'm just putting myself out there to say, look, if you got a story for me, just pull me to the side. Like I'm full attention. I want to hear it. I'm here for it. Anyway, back to you, my brother. So you're preparing to, you're spending your time, you're biding your time to prepare to get out. You said parole, you had 10 days. Within the 10 days, you were on the way to Georgia.
Well, I mean, because I was like, when I got out, like I said, I had no real, like, I didn't know what was next. I knew God's got something for me, but I didn't know what was next. But when I got out, like I said, I started seeking, like, some fleshly things, like the devil was outside waiting for me, like I was
you
in
left your protective situation, and now he's waiting.
I was in a super like structured, protected place, and now I had this level of freedom, and the flesh was just like still like, still alive and kicking.
That freedom can be dangerous if you're not ready for it.
Right.
And it can be dangerous.
Thankfully, like I said, I got in some trouble right away. Like I was making some bad choices, like right out the gate, and ended up in handcuffs again, like about a month and a half after getting out. And I had told you earlier, like I like heard in my heart, like when I had the handcuffs on in my mom's living room, like despise not the chastening of the Lord. I was like, thank God that this is happening right now, because it could have gone a whole nother way.
Wow. Like you were being protected again.
Yeah.
Like it's just like, you know what? You might not be ready now. Let me put you back in the protective custody.
Let you get a little taste. Give me a little taste of what I just experienced. And it broke my heart a little bit that I did that, like that I was like, Lord, what am I doing? Like, I needed him. I needed but I didn't have a church, you know what I mean? I wasn't in the Word anymore. Like after I got out, I was like trying to catch up on what was going on with this person and that person, and a woman was like my focus. So there was all these things that were distractions and just like got me off like on the wrong on the wrong path, and thankfully, like, I had that little moment, that little check, and that got me back thinking right. And then, my sister and brother-in-law did give me the opportunity. They said this new new trimester is coming up, if it's just something you want to do. And it was. We came down for a glory nights, and for like I signed us up. I signed up for a baptism because I had never been water baptized. And I was like, I got to do that. So you got
baptized with the glory nights?
Yeah, well, my mom and my son and we all got baptized.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah. And it was just like, it was amazing. And Ascend was like, and I need this. So my sister and brother-in-law were kind enough to open up their home, to let me come down here and begin.
Wow. That's beautiful, man. It's funny because I always want to know people's story. Like, how'd you end up here? You know what I'm saying? Because for the record, I ain't never heard of Ascend. I never heard of Brian Guerin. And I had been here almost 2 years, a year and a half. I had moved here, left California. I don't know if people thought I moved here for the academy or whatever, but I never heard of any of it. I just saw that I had been attending church in Nigeria, like digitally. You know what I'm saying? So I'm coming up in like the real spiritual, hyper spiritual, like African church. It's all about like, deliverance and speaking in tongues, just the heavy stuff. And these guys praying in tongues for 12 hours straight. And I saw that there was a church in Atlanta that had this prayer that was from like 2 to like 8. And so in my mind, I'm thinking like, wow, there's going to be people praying for that long. Like, I never seen that here in America. I need to go check that out. And I mapped it out. I saw how far it was, but I was that determined to like put myself around somebody like this. And so I would start to go to Ascend for the Wednesday night or the Wednesday prayer situation. It wasn't what I thought it would be, but I still hadn't been around people that were dedicated to prayer or waiting on the Lord for that period of time before. So I was impressed. And so I'd go week after week. And then I was moved to just, let me check it out on a Sunday. Like if these are the type of people that are about this life, and this is what I'm about.
I mean, when it started, it was like people lined up
Yeah.
outside the door to get in for prayer.
I was blown away by that, and I wanted to be around that. And so I just was like, let me bring the family. Let's see how the kids like the kids ministry situation. And that's when I saw Brian Guerin. That's when I knew. I wasn't caught up in, I guess there's a level of celebrity around his name or whatever, like, because I meet people that know who he is. But I had no idea. There was nothing in me that was driven by him individually, his ministry to come. I just wanted to be around those people that like to pray. And so when I saw him, he reminds me of someone that has been someone who has been very inspirational in my life, and that's Bill Johnson. And Bill Johnson's one of those people that just loves Jesus so much that you can hear his voice crack and he can break down, and he has to pause so that he doesn't break down in tears. That's what Brian was doing when I first saw him speak. Like he would pause because he just didn't, he would be breaking down in tears if he were to keep going. And I was so impressed that I was just like, I think he loves Jesus more than me. I was like, this dude loves Jesus more than me. So I want to be around him. I want to be around these people who are just seeking so heavily. Like it must be because they must see what I'm seeing in this cat right here. Like he's broken. Like he loves Jesus. He can't even talk about him without crying. It touched me so much that I was like, I need to be around this. I believe that these people are inspired by this level of intimacy. Like this is my next, because coming from like the African church, it's about power, moving in the gifts. It's about praying for, like I said, 12 hours straight. And I was doing that. But this man who's so just in love and in the secret place. And, I saw that he was coming from a secret place. He wasn't just charting out sermon series and, you know what I'm saying? It's just like sharing from his heart. I was like, I think I need to be around this cat. You know what I mean? And so that's how I ended up attending. It's just because I was impressed with how much a man loved Jesus, that I wanted to be around that I thought that, well, maybe I'll meet him one day and he'll actually lay hands and impart, because I know that there's something supernatural to that, because there's a level of mercy and grace that the Lord has to show upon you to be able to allow you even to come that close to him. And so, Brian, if you ever watch this, that's my story, bro. Let me get some hands. Pray over your boy. But yeah, man, that's how I came to, and I believe I met you before I attended to church. Yeah, and so before I had even become like a regular person to come to the church, like we had met in the extracurricular, realm of Ascend. But man, yeah, I've been blessed, and relationships like this, and encouraged by testimonies like yours, and just everyone's testimony and story being so different. And to be able to trace God's hand, his sovereign hand, his orchestration power in everybody's story. Like it increases my affection towards him, to just see that he can take care in each individual story on such a level when the devil is not omnipresent. So he only knows how to just, okay, these are the fornicators, these are the drug addicts, these are the criminals, and he just kind of knows how to group you up. But because he is God, all knowing, all present, and he can just take each of our individual stories and craft something so beautiful that we can all write a different story and to be all to his glory. And yeah, man, I'm so inspired by just being around other people with testimonies. I look forward to sharing my story with you. I believe that there's an element of my story that, like Paul, like I could brag about, you know, like I can, say I used to do this and that and this and work with these people and so I was in prayer and I was like, oh, I'm gonna do 10 hours today in the closet. Told the wife like you're not gonna see me today. And so I'm praying, and the Lord put this verse on my heart. He said, "Go to Philippians." And so I go to Philippians, and I see Paul. He's saying, "It's Philippians 3:7 and 8. But whatever former things were gains to me, as I thought then, these things once regarded as advancements in merit, I have come to consider as loss, absolutely worthless, for the sake of Christ and the purpose which He has given my life. But more than that, I count everything as loss compared to the priceless privilege and supreme advantage of knowing Christ Jesus my Lord and of growing more deeply and thoroughly acquainted with him, a joy unequaled. For his sake, I have lost everything and consider it all garbage so that I may gain Christ." I tried to read it out loud and I couldn't read it without weeping. For his sake, I have lost everything and I consider it all garbage so that I may gain Christ. Like I had to consider it all garbage first. Whenever I hear "so that," like I'm like, oh, it's conditional.
Mm-hmm.
And so I grab my phone and I'm reading this Philippians verse. I text my wife because when you walk into my house, as you saw, I have like a little office, like I have a chiropractic table and some equipment there. Well, you would, before I read this, you would see a shrine in that office. Like I've worked 2 Olympic games. Like that's like the Mount Rushmore for my profession. I've worked multiple tours with multiple celebrities, and like I had a lanyard and security credentials, and I had all of that stuff just hanging on my mantle, and it would literally look like a shrine because it was so much. Like I'm talking like a 20-year career.
Mm-hmm.
I texted my wife and I said, when I come down there, I don't want to see any of those things. So I want you to take them all outside and put them in the trash as garbage. And I never want to see it again. And so now when you walk down there, it's clean. You don't see anything. And so I introduced myself as Craig. People know me as Doc Dossman, Doc D, Doc.
Mm-hmm.
People in California don't even know my government name. Like I'm Doc Dossman. And here I'm Craig. And most people don't even know anything about my history and what I used to do because I'm careful, but it's important that those things are as garbage so that I can gain Christ, and so I have this, I'm just careful about when I can bring that stuff up and when I can speak on it to make sure that it's redemptive or it's bringing glory to him or it's speaking to how far I've come
Yeah.
rather than a point of pride, because it's still easy to do that. You know what I mean? But my testimony it's full of that, but I know that the way that he's crafting it for me to tell it, he will receive all the glory because of all the places that he's allowed me to access and all the people, the influencers I've been able to influence, the people that I've been able to lay hands on and pray over. Like when I include those things in my testimony, he will get the glory. But if I'm just like, yo, I was just on a boat with Diddy, or I was just, smoking weed with Lauryn Hill, or you know what I'm saying? Like these things are as garbage now. You know what I mean? But the testimonies that he gives each of us, it's so beautiful, and it just speaks to his sovereignty, and it speaks to him being all knowing, and not like the devil, who would just class us in just a group of, what your sin is, and what he's tripped you up by. It's redemptive. He's full of mercy. He's so gentle, and so I look forward to sharing mine, with you. But I'm so grateful that you've been able to make yourself vulnerable to share yours, with me, with the same mindset to say like, yo, this is not for any glory of mine, and it could be easy. Like a lot of people be like, yeah, man, I was in the pen and da da da, you know what I'm saying? But to really come with a redemptive mindset to say like, look, this is what he saved me from, and if he could save me and the stuff that I've been in since I was 12, if he can do this for me, like I wasn't just in prison, I was in prison since I was 12. I was born into this. This is generational iniquity. If he can do that for me, you know what I'm saying? And so you just don't know how powerful this is and how many people you can touch, and the potential of your story. And I hope that when you watch this back, you'll see maybe some disconnects to say like, man, I just started talking about going to California with my sister's ashes, and I didn't even get into my sister dying. Like, to see like anything that might be like, oh, I got to make sure I connect this into my story, so when I'm writing, I can make it more fluid. And so I'm hoping it helps you in that way as well. But more importantly, to just encourage your son, whatever he might be going through right now, to encourage anyone to see that nobody's too far gone. No matter how far you think you've gone, you probably haven't gone to the level, that this person may have gone, but you can see what he's doing with Cam right now. You know what I mean? What would you say is the most, I guess, powerful change that has happened as far as where you see yourself today, where you were before at 12 and at 18 and in prison, and, like, who is Cam today? What's the after picture? Like I love looking at transformation photos on Instagram, like people who were 300 pounds and now they're 150. Like, what's the after shot look like in the spirit? If I was to,
I think just
who
like
you are today.
my heart now for people, like where I didn't, you know what I mean? Like I got a heart to serve,
Mm-hmm.
just serve the Lord. Like I never imagined that,
Yeah. I think we shared an interesting moment together at church one time. You mentioned, you said, I had never, just speaking about moving forward in life, whether it be getting married or having children. And we were sharing with one another the fact that there are certain lanes we had never walked down. Or you were confessing to me, like, look, man, like the last time you went back to prison was because you was focused on the female, you focusing on the wrong thing. But now here we are with the potential of just moving forward in your promised land and what the Lord has for you. That being wife, children, family, you know what I'm saying? All these things are possible. Well, you were standing there like, man, I've never been in a position to pursue a godly courtship or to pursue a woman of God in the way that the Lord would have me do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I looked at you and I was like, wow, me neither. I had never been in that position. When I married my wife, this is before I received him. This is when I was living, and we were both doing that. And so we didn't pursue each other in that way, but yet and still he redeemed our relationship to now I'm 10 years in and I'm happily married, man. And I know that I'm with my soulmate. I hope you can see our energy and our vibe when we're on the podcast. Like, Cindy is my wife, you know what I'm saying? And she's the covenant person that God had for me, even though I didn't know it. And so even though I didn't pursue her in the way that, would probably be advisable for you to move forward and pursue, you just have to know that he's with you, and wherever you end up, he's going to redeem it and make sure that, it's the person that he has for you. and he's preparing you and he's preparing her. And however it happens, if it's the exact model and pattern that he would have for someone in a sanctified, divine relationship, like dope. But if it's not, like, look at me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a happily married man and living a kingdom lifestyle. So he can redeem however this thing works out. You know, I can say that I had never pursued just brotherhood or just a friendship um, with that mindset. Just to say like, oh man, I'm fully pursuing this, you know, in a Christ-like manner to have a covenant brotherhood relationship. Like, man, I ain't been there either. You know what I mean? And so there are people that have been born in the promised land. You know, I met a brother the other day who said that his wife was his first kiss, the first time he ever held a woman's hand. And same for her. She had never kissed a man or held a man's hand before they were married. And so I'm just like, that's his story. You know, that's not my story. You know, I wish I was a virgin when I got married. I wish I had never kissed another woman, you know. I wish I hadn't ever had, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
but that's not my story. I believe that he brought us up the path that he brought us. There's a reason and a purpose for everything, and we'll see, you know, what that's for. But I believe that whatever he has for you, whoever he has for you, he's preparing her for you just as he's preparing you right now. And all the things that he's preparing you, or the things that he's brought you through, it's for a purpose. It's possibly, you know, for a ministry, but I really believe it's for what's next for you. And I believe that that's going to be family. That's going to be the thing that sets you up for that kingdom structure, which is going to be to put you as a priest of your home and a wife in submission and children, you know, with that, you know. So I don't know if this moment is just me blessing you, you know, with that, or speaking that over you, because I know you always say, man, I'm not sure what the Lord wants to do, but I know it's going to be good. You know what I mean? And I believe that's the truth.
Yeah.
But I believe that that's what's going to be good. It's going to be family. You know, it's going to be a wife and be children. You know, I know you cringe when I say children. But, you know, whatever it is that he has for you, like you said, it's going to be good.
Yeah.
What would you say if you were closing out your book, making an appeal, you know, like I said, showing the Cam transformation, how far I've come. I'm here now. I've come from this. If he can do it for me, he can do it for you. And this is like your final couple paragraphs to wrap up your testimony, but you're speaking to, you know, the audience now. And maybe it's somebody gives you 5 minutes to speak to a juvenile detention hall of young men, and they need to hear your testimony, but you got 5 minutes. Like, that's probably how you're going to end up making your appeal at the end of your book. You're going to kind of wrap up your story, and you're going to kind of focus on the reader and show them that, yo, I told you this story because this could be you.
Mm-hmm.
And so how would you consider yourself telling your testimony? Let's say you're in an Uber, you know, with someone, and you gotta tell them about the Lord, you know, in this short trip, and give your testimony, you know, to where you're just like, look, he took me from here to here. And if he can do it for me, he can do it for you. Like, what's your here to here, I guess is what I'm trying to catalog digitally, so you can look back and have this outline.
Just like I was the worst of the worst. I was a social terrorist, is what I like claimed that I called myself that at one point in my life, and you know, God changed that all. You know, He just took that heart of stone and just like made it all mush, and like, you know, now it's just a heart that just wants to like serve Him and please Him and like bring people into that love that He showed to me, you know, and see that redemption in others, you know, see that change in others, see like, you know, those blessings unfold for people who have had those, who have cheated themselves out of that, you know, and
Yeah, that's powerful. It's needed. It's necessary, you know, and everyone's going to have their audience or people that gravitate to their story or that find that story resonates with them. And so that's why it's so important that we all can share our story, that we all can tell our testimony, because whether we both put our testimony out there, there are going to be people that mine hit with, and there are going to be people that yours hit with. And so if we all cast a wider net, there's just a greater chance to pull in more fish. Do you have any final thoughts, or are there anything that maybe we didn't include in your testimony, or is there anything that you want to just make sure you include on record, or anything you want to say to your son, or just anything you want to say as we wrap up?
No, it's just been a blessing. Like, it really has. It's been an honor to do this.
Yeah.
And, I don't like my story, my testimony. I've not done anything, but it's what the Lord's done in me and what He's going to do through me, because this is just, we haven't gotten to the good parts yet.
Yeah.
We've gotten through this is only the beginning.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All this time we just talked.
This
and
is
I
season
just talked
one.
about, this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
So it's just, man, stay tuned. It's going to be so good.
Yeah.
It's going to be so good.
And so sometimes you wonder, like, do I write the book now, or do I just start journaling it? Because I know that, we ain't got to the end yet. Like, the good part ain't even there yet. But I think the key is that we can't use that as an excuse to not write the book or to tell the story. And I believe I'm to say this to you.
Yeah.
Because you have to understand that the climax is when you gave your life to Jesus. That is the ultimate climax of your story. The climax is not how many people you're going to lead to Christ, or how big your ministry will be one day, or how many children you have with this beautiful wife that the Lord blesses you with. Like, those are all nice byproducts of that moment you gave your heart to the Lord.
Yeah.
And so everybody's climax to their story is that moment. And so if you've given your heart to God, like, you can tell your story now, because that's what the story is about, is this transition and this journey from I wasn't saved, and He brought me and saved me from this and took me out of it. Now, where the story ends up, we'll see that. And when we see that, you'll be able to point us to your story and say, here's my book. You know what I'm saying? But as far as that needing to be included in your book, like, who knows how long you can wait for that?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So tell your story now. That book ain't going to write itself. That's the title of my book. Be on the lookout for it. I think that, and He knows, like, I've been in the process, and I'm talking about the Lord has just been downloading stuff to where I'll write a chapter in like 5 minutes, and then I'll just send it to Him real quick, and He'll be like, yo, that's some good stuff.
Yeah,
but He can tell you it's going to be good. It's probably going to be a little humorous. I've been commissioned to write it with a humorous tone. And so that's new for me, but be on the lookout for that. I've just really thoroughly enjoyed this. I enjoy my time just with you. You just come to the house, kicking it with the fam, eating my food, you know what I'm saying? I'm a healer, because of what I do. And I was told that hospitality is part of that gift. And so I believe that that's the reason why I just love to cook and entertain people. Yeah. And so I made him some of my homemade ice cream with cottage cheese, and he actually thought it was good. And I just appreciate you, man, as a brother, for just even embracing me as somebody who's just, like I said, I come different. Like, I didn't come to ascend on just like the train that's just like, yo, I'm coming to ascend. Yeah. Like, I ain't never heard of y'all. You know what I'm saying? But like, you just embrace me, and I am meeting new people and making some friends, but you're the one that's stuck, and you're the one that we tend to gravitate to one another, and we tend to just share what the Lord has shown us, and we just click, and we talk on the phone, we text. Like, I don't have any friends like that here in Georgia, period. You know what I'm saying? So I just want to appreciate you as my bro, and just looking forward to building and whatever that looks like And however, even if me just helping you with the process of the book just brings us and bonds us even more, if I'm just brought into your life for that season to help you with that, I'm just excited to be your friend and your bro, and to grow and like you said, build more relationships at Ascend, at church, and just to have this level of family and community, where we can settle in and just build fellowship. So I'm excited what the future holds. I'm excited to be in your wedding. You know what I'm saying? All of that.
For sure.
So I think that's a wrap. We just want to bless you all in Jesus' name. And I hope you were encouraged to just see not just his amazing story, but maybe even convicted to tell your story, and to have conviction to just put aside whatever concern you have, fear of rejection, the vulnerability. It takes a lot to put all your heart on some paper for the world to see. And so a lot of people hesitate that, and so I believe that this book will walk people through getting free from that stuff. So it might even be some deliverance in the book. But I hope that you guys are inspired to even consider the notion of writing a book, telling your testimony, sharing it, cataloging it, journaling it, whatever it is. And yeah. Cam, I'm gonna ask you a favor though. I know we didn't discuss this, but like I said, I didn't know this until tonight. But I just believe that I'm not the only one who would like a prayer. That the Bible says, freely you receive, freely you must give. And so I would like for you to just pray us out, and just basically asking the Lord to share with me what he's given to you. And that's just this level of grace and favor that's on your life that has brought you this far. Like it's favor. I see so much favor on you, and I want some of it. And so I believe that I'm not the only one. And I believe that when I say, oh, after this, I'm going to get Cam to pray for me, I believe that people out there are just like, yo, what's up? You know what I mean? And so I'm asking that you would just do it now so that they could receive it as well. And so I hope that you guys can see that this brother is blessed and highly favored of God, and that his favor is his harp. His favor gets him into positions and places that he would not have been able to get. And if you want some of that, I would just ask you to just believe and just put yourself in a position to receive. And he's just going to pray for us, to say goodnight and to say goodbye or whatever, and leave us with this gift, like a parting gift for sitting and listening to us talk for 3 hours. But yeah, if you don't mind, man, I really appreciate that. And I'm like, for real, trying to receive.
For sure.
Yeah.
Father, I just thank you, Lord, for tonight, for everything you've done in my life, Lord, and the favor and the love that you've shown me. Lord, I thank you for Craig, Lord, and what he's doing in his ministry and this podcast, Lord, and the honor that it's been to be here, be present, and be able to share this testimony of what you've done in my life, Lord. And Lord, I ask that you place your favor on all those that are listening to this podcast. Just show yourself mightily in their lives and bless them, Lord. Bless Craig, Lord, and what he's doing here. I just thank you and praise you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Appreciate you, bro.
Yeah, appreciate
Look forward to having you back on. I'm sure there's some other things we can chop it up about.
Like I said,
you know what I'm saying?
Stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned.
There's definitely some other episodes. We can focus on some other things.
Yeah. And
I didn't get to the dreams,
Guess
or,
we can have
the
dreams.
words.
I love the dreams.
The dreams have been wild since I've been down here too. Like, wild.
I'm into that. If y'all, I'm into that. So you want to come up to me and tell me about your dreams, like we can get into that too.
I mean, I feel like it's the most common way that the Lord's speaking to
it
people.
Biblically,
you know
it
what
is.
I mean? And people
Absolutely.
aren't either not paying attention or they're not stewarding them well. I know that's where sometimes with me, like if I don't steward one well, then they're it almost like it cuts them off.
It's true.
To a degree.
It's true.
But the Lord's good and He's gracious.
Yeah.
And, you know.
Yeah, he be
That's how
having
he
some
speaks
good
to his
ones, like the
people.
apocalyptic end of the world type dreams. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I love the dream stuff. So the dream stuff, the supernatural stuff, like if you got any of that, holler at me, and we might need to have you on the podcast. But anyway, peace and blessings. God bless you, and we see you on the next one. We'll have a song for you on the next one because the wife's not here today, so I'm not about to hit that. But shalom.